Hello, darlings! Welcome back to Lum Squad, the one and only podcast dedicated to the wonderful and wacky world of Rumiko Takahashi's Urusei Yatsuro. I'm one of your hosts, Lum Ramayasha.
And I'm Andrew A.C. Yoshimura. How have you been?
I've been, in the times we're living, I've been okay, I will say.
That's good to hear. Yeah, they are very strange times.
Yeah.
We're recording this on the 31st of October for me, so the 30th of October for you.
Halloween!
So just before Halloween, yep. I'm not really dressed up, actually, so I should have worn something more Urusei Yatsura appropriate, but I don't really have any cosplays geared towards that, believe it or not, except I do have a tiger stripe jumper.
Oh my gosh.
So I could look a little bit like Ray, a little bit.
Or Lum's dad.
That is my ultimate cosplay. I used to be a lot heftier, a lot fatter than I am now, and at one stage I probably could have pulled that off, I reckon, but not anymore. I lost about 15 kilos or something, and I just don't have the look for that anymore. But still, maybe one day I'll shove a cushion down my shirt, and then I'll be Lum's dad.
Oh my gosh! I mean, your entire family could cosplay as Lum's family.
That would be very cute, actually. a little darling Lum. So, are you going to dress up as anything tomorrow? Your time?
I haven't had anything prepared, unfortunately. I'll maybe throw something makeshift because I am going to a friend's house for a small Halloween party. But of course, under these quarantine times, a lot of Halloween traditions are kind of on the kibosh. I don't even know if we'll get many trick-or-treaters this year, and it's very sad. Hopefully, next year, Halloween can be lively again, and we'll even maybe plan a Halloween special of the show to celebrate that too.
That would be good.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. But though, in this volume we're going to talk about today, there are a lot of really good horror stories, so that fits the occasion, even though you guys are probably going to listen to this quite a bit after Halloween.
Probably, yeah. It's always good to tell people the context of when we record this, just in case, because sometimes people ask, going, what was going on when you guys were recording that? It seems like ages ago, or it seems like 2 weeks ago, and it's like, we may as well just give them the date.
It seems like
that
a year
way I won't have to
ago.
answer questions.
How strange.
That was only once.
Well, it has been
only one time.
About 4 months since we recorded our last episode.
Yeah, June, July, August, September.
Yeah, about June was the last time we recorded, and I have not released that episode yet. I plan to release these pretty quickly here, as Volume 8's coming out soon, and I want us to get to that, because Volume 8's going to be big, with a big character finally getting introduced to English readers for the first time that I'm so excited for. But first, we gotta cover Volume 7, which is what we're here to talk about today. And even though this, in some respects, is a traditional volume, I think there are a lot of interesting trends in this volume. A lot of interesting kind of motifs, recurring elements that Takahashi employs and writes stories about that I found very interesting to read and go through.
Yeah, look, this volume actually differs from the last one. The last one was very school-centric and school-focused with a lot of extra characters kind of thrown in there. And this one kind of backs away from that a little bit. And I think maybe some of the reasons are that it's, these come out weekly, effectively, or they used to come out weekly, these stories. And so they would kind of be more or less in tune with the rest of the world at the time and the seasons and, kids on school holidays. Because if you're on school holidays, you don't necessarily want to read about kids being in school. So I think a lot of mangaka would, who do things weekly and don't have large continuity, and, have self-contained stories can kind of adjust their stories to a setting that's kind of more happening at that particular moment in time.
I think so. Though, in the first half of this volume especially, I think the school setting, and particularly at least the class at Onsen-Mark, are a very prominent presence. Even in chapters which are not set at the school, oftentimes those characters will show up, like in the end of the first half of this volume, the volume 13 part, at the Mendo family masquerade battle. Like, the class and Onsen-Mark are just there participating. So, Takashi's really getting a lot of mileage out of those characters.
She's really focusing on Onsen-Mark a lot more.
Yes.
I'm finding as this goes on.
Yes, especially. I mean, to just start off this volume, we have the Musashi arc, the Super Musashi arc is another one of these like alternate tale stories, which place the characters.
It's a historical setting.
Yeah, it places the characters at another point in time. It's the characters playing as roles of other characters, and of course this is retelling the story of the famous samurai Miyamoto Musashi and his rivalry with Sakaki Kojiro. And Onsen plays the role of Musashi, the main character, but of course, as you can see from just the first page, the title page of the first chapter of this arc, Onsen is way in the back with Ataru
right
way
behind
more
a cow.
prominent. Yeah, right behind a cow that Ataru promptly cooks in this chapter. He just steals and roasts a cow over a fire. It's great. But yeah, Onsen is like...
This is good, so...
Onsen's like yelling in the background, "Hey, I'm the main character!" while the focus is on Ataru and Lum and Cherry.
I mean, even Cherry is bigger than him on the front page of this chapter.
Yeah.
And that's telling you something.
I think it is telling. I mean, actually, I also want to point, not only is Onsen-Mark prominent, I think Cherry is really prominent in this volume. Like, every chapter, especially in this first half of the volume 13 part of this volume, like, Cherry is like in every chapter. Like, he has a prominent role, or he has, like, at least a good few pages dedicated to gags involving him. So I think she really got interested in Cherry and Onsen-Mark around this time.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because Cherry goes through waves. Like, he just won't appear for a while. In fact, there was a long time near the start where he just didn't appear for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think even Sakura, like, maybe appeared back before he did.
Yeah.
And then he would just come in for a big burst for like 5 or 6 chapters and then just kind of disappear again.
Yeah.
But then she started to get into the Looney Tunes gag of him just popping up out of nowhere.
Oh my gosh, there's such a good gag.
Just completely randomly. And everyone, kind of throws up or like is bowled backwards.
Oh my god, there's so many good gags in this volume that are just predicated on just Cherry popping up. Like, when they are going camping or on their picnic in a remote location, Ataru's setting up the picnic and he's saying, "Hey, don't put a picnic in the middle of the road, someone will show up." And like, Ataru was like, "Who's gonna show up?" And there's just like a page dedicated to close-ups of every character, just building up anticipation for the bottom panel of Cherry's face just showing up and taking everyone aback. Oh my god, there's so many gags like that, where it's like a big build-up, and then at the end, it's like just Cherry's face, and everyone is just like flummoxed, and they all fall down because they weren't expecting
The good thing about drawing a big Cherry's face is there's not a lot of detail there, and you can just kind of make it shiny, so it's probably really super quick to draw, which is probably why that gag works so well. Anyway, so for this chapter, it's set in the Keicho era, in Miyamoto, Miyamoto Village. I almost said Miyamoto, that would make sense, Miyamoto Village. And you've got basically Onsen-Mark declaring himself the main character, wanting to make something of himself. He is Musashi. And then, of course, he runs into Ataru straight away, who's stealing an entire cow. So he just, Onsen here is just kind of completely run over by the villagers chasing Ataru. And then he is, of course, shacked up with Lum, the adopted daughter of the temple priest. And he just gets the cow back and they just cook it.
Yeah. Oh, poor Mary. It's worth noting the temple priest is, of course, Cherry. So in this reality, Lum is Cherry's daughter, apparently. Yeah. Though they make reference to Lum and Ten being aliens, so I assume they are adopted.
They do say adopted daughter, so
yeah.
I guess that covers it. But they call the cow they're cooking some daikon radish.
Yeah,
so,
very
which
deluded.
looks nothing like a cow.
And of course,
and everyone...
Yeah, the villagers and the farmer, they come to reclaim the cow and they just burst out crying when they see he's been roasted. Or she's been roasted, poor Mary.
She's been roasted. It was her name was Mary, the daikon/cow, and of course they all tuck in and have a good feed, and then Ataru gets his comeuppance afterwards.
Yeah, I mean this is a reference to something that happened in the actual story of Musashi, like him being tied up by a rope, hung by a tree. Like, a lot of my knowledge of the story of Musashi comes from Vagabond, the manga by Takehiko Inoue. In this respect, Ataru's role in this mini arc it reminds me a lot of Matahachi, who in Vagabond is the childhood friend of Musashi and basically kind of masquerades as both Musashi and Kojiro at different points in that story. So the whole idea
and I think that's needed for the scoundrelness of Ataru, because you know, you've got Onsen-Mark going off and doing his own thing, declaring himself the main character when he really has nothing to do with the story.
Yeah.
Okay, so of course, Ataru is a cad, and they, you know, and he's a thief. He's a well-known thief.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he escapes. Well, Lum helps him escape, and then he does a runner.
Yeah, he after Lum helps untie him, he promptly ties her to the tree and just runs off. It's worth noting that he was going to be freed by a bunch of different women, but when they all, like, convened and noticed, like, each other and were like, what are you doing here? Like, they all realized that Ataru promised to marry all of them, so he was, like, two-timing all of them, and so they all drew their weapons at him. So it's so good. But yeah, when Ataru runs off, he runs to an old era McDonald's, I guess, which is a tea shop.
Yeah, there's definitely a McDonald's reference here. A tea shop in the mountains.
It's the literal arches. The little M arch is on this tea shop.
Yep. It's a nice reference. And of course, you know, he's thieving his way across the countryside and runs into Mendo's character.
Sasaki Kojiro, the fated rival of Musashi.
And of course, he runs away with Onsen-Mark because, and none of them pay.
Yeah,
it's all part of a scam where none of them pay.
That's a runner in these chapters, is that all the characters, wherever they eat out, they just leave without paying.
They just do a dine and dash.
Yeah.
Which is great. I mean, like, no matter how, like, handsome, and Mendo looks even more handsome than normal with his very long ponytail and monkey on his shoulder.
Oh my god, the monkey!
He's still doing a runner.
Oh my gosh, the monkey! I love how the monkey, like, grows larger and larger with each successive chapter. He starts, like, being on, you know, Mendo's shoulder. He's small enough to, like, ride on Mendo's shoulder. In the second chapter, he's, like, clinging to the front of him. He's as big as his torso. And then in the third chapter, he's, like, as big as Mendo. Like,
he's basically like a yeti by the last chapter.
Yeah, he has a huge growth spurt. One thing I realized, actually, about the waitress at the tea shop, I think this is supposed to be Ninja Kaede. I think this is a rare return appearance from her. Because you'll notice...
It is, yes.
Not only does she look like her, she's throwing throwing stars at the group as they are dining dashing.
You can really tell her in profile when you see that. You can really tell that it's her with her particular hairstyle and the kimono she's wearing. So that's... It's a nice little reference, and it's more like a nice little cameo there, I think.
There are a lot of interesting cameos in this volume, I will say. Like, that happened surprisingly.
Yeah, I think it's just fun to put them in different historical settings. We've already done this in the Heian period before, a couple of volumes ago, and that worked quite well, so she decided to do it again. The end of this chapter is, of course, Onsen and Mendo facing off as their great rivalry, but Mendo's already forgotten his name.
Yeah, I also love in the end of these chapters, they have, like, kind of a old-timey movie poster, like, promoting the next chapter of the story.
Yeah, they're kind of like a short sheet movie poster, like, for the old samurai movies back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Kind of the B movies.
It's such a good
It's got definitely a B movie feel about it. And so the next chapter is called Musashi in Training. And, of course, just features Ataru. And Ataru is still going around being Ataru.
Yeah, and he's still stealing
thieving,
food
dining
from
and dashing.
The shopping street. Like, I love the anachronistic nature of this, because there's clearly an old period, like, KFC. Like, you have, like, a statue of the Colonel
fried chicken,
outside this fried chicken shop. You also notice, like, in the corner, there's, like, just some place selling drugs. There's, like, drugs on this banner in big text. So that's kind of strange.
That is still a thing. So that is still a big thing in Japan, because what we call pharmacies or chemists, they just call them drugstores.
Okay.
And they just have big, large signs out the front in front of all the pharmacists, all the pharmacies in Japan that just say drugs,
okay.
which is very exciting if you're new to the country, very disappointing when you go inside.
Oh yeah, you're not going to get your kush there. There's also, it's also fun that there's a Kyoto branch, McDonald's tea shop, I guess, right next to the KFC, and a Chinese restaurant on the other side.
So of course, Lum has followed Ataru all the way to Kyoto. And she's still dead set on marrying him, and he's just not having any of it. And he's still calling himself Musashi from time to time, already getting that bad reputation. And of course, debt collectors show up to the Yoshioka Dojo, which is Sakura.
Yeah.
They all want her to pay for her meals. So the theme just keeps continuing in this. So they're going to cancel the tab if he brings in Musashi. Who is Ataru posing as him.
Mm-hmm.
And Shinobu's in this as well, and the monkey, you're right, is just getting larger and larger and larger.
Yeah. I mean, I just love how the monkey is, like, just crawling all over Mendo in every panel. It's in a different spot.
I reckon the first read through of this, I didn't even notice the monkey. It wasn't until the second one that I kind of noticed that he had a monkey attached to him, and I went, was that there before? Oh, yeah, it was, but he was smaller. So they're all eating at a tea house, and nobody, Ataru's wearing sunglasses rather than a mask now, which is another cliche that people do in Japan. They hide their identity by either a face mask or sunglasses or both. And both, if you wear both of those at the same time, it looks very suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not, often they say you're not allowed to wear both of those into like convenience stores, because they're afraid you might rob them or something.
I mean, in this case, they wouldn't be wrong.
No, exactly. So they all meet up in the tea shop and they all kind of challenge each other, and that doesn't really go anywhere because they're all just kind of hitting on each other and nobody really knows what their real identities are.
Mm-hmm.
So they all decide that they're going to go catch this Musashi, and Ataru actually uses his name, Ataru.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just do a runner again.
Yeah, no, Onsen-Mark is also done and dashing all over the town, so even though Ataru was impersonating him, like the actual Onsen is Musashi, he was doing the same thing anyway, so it wasn't really a lie. And then, Ataru promised to help Sakura capture Musashi, but instead he and Cherry just grab onto his food sack and they run away with him. And he's like protecting the food and kicking Mendo. He's like kicking Mendo away, saying the food is mine. And leaving a stunned Lum behind is like, what are you doing?
So next chapter is Bad Boy Musashi Be a Man. There's a bit of a recap. I do like the first panel of this recap, which is very much stylized in the era of that of the art style back then, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of goes to, and these look like they would have been color pages, and you can tell because there's a lot more shading and a lot more kind of contrast in here.
I think so, yeah.
And often when they say they're color pages, they like sometimes they were like full color.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just had shades of orange and black rather than just black.
Two-tone versions, yeah. That was pretty common.
Yeah. Tricolor kind of stuff.
Like in this chapter, like when we first see Characters You Know and Love, like the monkey, it's pulling this cart carrying Sakura and Shinobu and Lum and Mendo on it. Like it is bigger than a person, as big as a person, and it's strong enough to carry 4 people in this giant cart around. Oh gosh.
And by this stage, they've kind of forgotten their original motivation and they've become basically a circus act, like a wandering circus act.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to track Musashi. They're trying to track down Ataru's Musashi, but in order to like pay their gets him money while they're on the road. They've basically become a traveling circus act alongside that. And so Lum does like this tightrope walking acrobatics tricks, like holding 10 from like a rope as he spits out fire. And then Mendo and the monkey are like the second act, and they do, I guess, monkey tricks. But like both decide to bail and just track down Ataru independently. So the troupe loses its 2 starring acts.
Yeah, and like, everyone's going to go see the acrobatic Lum.
Yeah.
And it literally says second-class monkey show.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that Shinobu, I guess, was doing some death throwing. That's also one of the acts. So I guess that's all they had left after Lum and Mendo bailed. Of course, when Mendo bails, he leaves behind his monkey, who we learned was named Jotaro. So he gets promptly renamed the monkey a little bit later in this chapter by Ataru, because Ataru encounters the monkey that was left behind by Mendo. He takes pity on the poor fella. Mm-hmm. And they go around robbing restaurants together as the monkey adopts the alias of Kojiro, Mendo's character.
Yeah, and I think this dynamic between these 2 characters, just Ataru and a monkey, works super well.
It kind of makes me
They're just such a perfect team.
Yeah, it kind of makes me wish the monkey was in present day. He was around in like more of the actual story. Because in this flashback, in this like alternate period side story arc, is a lot of fun with Ataru. Just in general, him as a visual presence. It's like Kotatsu Neko. It's just a fun visual gag that this giant animal character is always around.
Especially when he smiles, because he's got that kind of like less detailed face, like kind of moon-shaped eyes and like really big teeth that are kind of drawn unevenly.
Yeah.
Which is just it's always a treat to see that when there's kind of just like a more comedy face, and this monkey does that a lot.
Yeah.
And of course Cherry is along with them, pretending to be the moral voice, but stealing as much food as they do, which is what cherries want to do.
Yeah, it's his MO.
And they go to a grand opening of the Blue Fish Cafe, where everyone subsequently gets food poisoning.
Yeah, they eat some really bad blowfish prepared by Onsen-Mark Musashi himself. Apparently, Musashi retired the life of the swordsman and became a blowfish chef, but he's a bad one because he prepared it wrong and he poisoned Ataru's group. And so, apparently the cure for that is to bury a person in sand for 1 day, but of course they don't want to do it outside the restaurant because that would ruin their reputation, so they go to Ganryu Island, which of course, as we know, is the place where Musashi and Kojiro had their fated final duel, but instead here, like, they go to bury Taru's group in the sand, and when they do, it's revealed Mendo's group and Sakura and Shinobu, they'd already been there apparently earlier and gotten poisoned by Onsen's bad blowfish. And so Onsen defeats Mendo by basically bashing him with an oar. And that's the end of their battle. That's the end of their fated rivalry duel.
Like, the beginning of the story and the end of the original Musashi story do kind of work in this context. Like, the first and last story beats are there. It's just the middle thing is just completely out of context.
Yeah, and
which is great.
Onsen as Musashi only appears like in the endings of the second and third chapters in this arc. So for the supposed starring character, he really does not get a ton of screen time, though he does win technically at the end. He's buried all his enemies in the dirt.
That's right. Yep, he does more or less win due to bad cooking, which is great. So this next episode is we come out of the historical setting and it's back to school. Mm-hmm. And this is Terror of the Willow Ghost. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of creepy stories here. Often schools in Japan have the 7 legends, someone threw themselves off a building, or there's a ghost of a kid who died in a bathroom, or, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of schools in Japan have these sort of myths. And Onsen-Mark is telling them about one of the scary stories here.
Well, actually, he first tells them about the 7 scary legends.
Of them. Yeah.
And what's interesting about this is that some of these we've seen in the series. A terrible failure cast where everyone falls asleep during the summer cherry blossom season. the legend of the Red Cloaked Phantom, those are actual events that have happened in the story already.
That's right, yeah. And they're all fun as well. Like that, the Red Cloak Phantom is kind of he only appears in like one story effectively in any meaningful way, but he's kind of got a bit of a lasting presence.
Yeah, I thought he was a memorable character design for sure.
Yeah, he's certainly different than a lot of the other characters.
Yeah.
In fact, there's in one of the games, one of the point-and-click adventure games, probably it was for the Mega Drive one, My Dear Friends, maybe? If you click on one of the bathroom mirrors, his reflection actually appears in there as kind of like a little gag.
Oh.
Which is pretty cool.
That is a really cool detail. I love little cameos, nods like that. Just to sprinkle in.
There are quite a few of those in the games as well.
That's really cool. But this bit of lore with Tomobiki is really interesting to me, like these 7 school legends. And obviously the class isn't impressed, but considering that some of these have already happened, I was wondering if Takahashi was thinking of actually doing all these stories at one point in the manga.
She probably thought that maybe if she was running out of ideas, she's got some setup here, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember if some of these have analogs, equivalents to events that happen in the manga. That's something that I would be interested in, like, kind of deep diving and see if all of these ever actually happened. But of course, the class themselves, they don't care about these quote-unquote trite stories. These are stories at every school.
Yeah, exactly. As I said before, like, there are very similar myths and legends that go about school, because school life in Japan is very boring. And the thing about Japanese schools is that they all look the same. They're all basically the same structure. Like big-ass concrete buildings, very cold in summer, very cold in winter, very hot in summer. They all have very similar 3 or 4 layouts with like a clock, especially the older school buildings. And so they have similar foliage. So, of course, if there's one legend at one school, then it gets spread around and slightly tweaked for the rest of the schools. Even the schools I taught at had their own myths and legends about, the teacher who died or, was locked in a classroom over the summer break and stuff like that,
Yeah, I mean, that certainly wouldn't be out of place in Urusei Yatsura.
That's true. And the reason why that, in one of the schools I was teaching at, that legend came out is because there was this room that all the teachers went into and didn't come out of for a long time, and it turns out that was the old smoking room. So it was like a spare room where teachers just went to smoke between classes.
Oh my gosh. That's great.
And that room was disgusting because it had about 50 years worth of nicotine caked onto the walls.
Oh, that sounds disgusting. Oh my gosh.
It is. So this one is the ghost of the willow tree, or a haunted willow tree. And of course they carve Mendo's come on on it. Family crest crying and saying, it's dark, I'm scared. And so the ghost comes out and gives them a treasure map.
Yeah, though not without like having to pretend to be dying first and then being like poked by kids, like gawkers whispering about him just on the ground, and then he's being chewed up by a dog. Oh my god, this guy gets so much abuse. Like,
yeah, he gets shit on pretty bad actually in this, because Mendo goes after him because he sees the carving on his back.
Yeah, in this case,
so he doesn't even really know why Mendo's after him.
Yeah, at least in this case, he gives him a good smack on the head and then plans revenge against him too.
Yeah. This is funny because a lot of this is basically he wants to murder them. He wants to bury them in a hole.
No, literally, yeah. He's planning to like bury Ataru alive in the hole. He's literally planning to like kill Mendo by bashing him over the head and then crucifying him on his tree. Like, he is planning to murder these kids.
Yeah, no, he's a real scary ghost, but he's just an incompetent one.
Mm-hmm.
This is great because it's got Kosuke in here, and we all know I'm a big Kosuke fan. And of course, Ataru, they're all there at night looking for the treasure. Mendo and Onsen are there, and Ataru just wails on Mendo and just knocks him out with a shovel, which is just a great sight to see.
Yeah.
And then Onsen brings them all in, and then what do? they get drunk.
Yeah, and Onsen's not supposed to have alcohol in that room. The sign explicitly says, do not bring alcohol in the room. Like, he was breaking the rules. I think he'd be reprimanded if the school principal actually cared. But yeah, like, they fight over the sake. Mendo steals the sake and gets drunk off it, and then they all get drunk off it.
I think it's great. I just love the fact that, like, he shouldn't be having sake. They shouldn't be drinking sake. Kosuke notices it and they just start taking a swig.
Yeah.
And they've already had some by the time Onsen kind of has finished his little mini lecture. And then Mendo calls it a purifying drink when he has it in his sword. And so, of course, they just all start drinking and fighting and partying. And Lum's just kind of hanging out there. She thinks it's a great time.
Yeah. She's just enjoying.
And of course, the next morning, the same Wawa, it's cramped with his family crest on it, is all over the school. And Ataru gets blamed for it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Like, the ghost, he didn't just stop with, like, the roof of the disciplinary room they're in. Like, he wrote it all over the school. Like, all over the front of the school. Like, really big. Like, very humiliating for Mendo.
I just want to say that Ataru is definitely the kind of kid who would underage drink.
Yeah, for sure.
He's definitely the kind of kid, him and Kosuke are the kind of kids who would definitely, like, you know, swipe liquor from their parents' liquor cabinet and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just awesome. The fact that he just saw sake and just went, yeah, shit, yeah, I'm going to have some of this.
Yeah.
I just think that's just an awesome little character reference to the kind of, like, guy Ataru is.
Yeah, they're no stranger to degeneracy.
Not that I ever did anything like that at all when I was in high school.
Really?
The age for drinking in Australia is actually 18.
That is lower than
like, in your last year of high school, you can totally, like, kind of get alcohol and do whatever you want. Nothing's stopping you.
Yeah, though that's not the case in Japan.
You're almost 18, you look 18. You probably get it pretty easily.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Tomobiki follows Australian rules then. Though I think they're still 17 at this point in the story.
They are still 17, yeah. I think he's just an underage. Like, he's there to have fun. The next chapter is Empty 10.
Enemy 10.
Did I read that? Oh, I did read that wrong. I should be wearing my glasses.
I really like this cover page with, like, intense shadow, like the word strong buddy upgrade are, like, being typed across his shadow. Like, I think that's a fun touch. I think Takashi did some really cool art in these title pages that play with, you know, the shapes of the characters and blend interesting things with the character art and background art. So this is another cool thing. I think
those pages are one of the things where she could really kind of let herself kind of do whatever she wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and draw, like, big splash pages of characters doing kind of fun things that they wouldn't normally be doing, or, like, you know, draw it a bit more detailed, which I think it's always fun to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
This one is a 10-centric episode, as you would already have guessed.
Mm-hmm.
They're all sitting down to eat some dinner, and Ataru and Ten are fighting, as per usual.
Fighting over food. I love how when they start fighting, like Lum and Ataru's parents, they just lift up their part of the table and just continue their meal in another corner of the room. Like, they're used to this. You'll notice
that they're on a separate table, which is like the kids' table.
Yeah. I mean, they're prepared for this. They knew this was inevitable, that this would happen. So they're like, okay, they've started up. Let's just move and continue our meal at another part of this room here. Like, I mean, this has been going on for a while, because Ataru's mom is saying, hey, can you stop this? Like, night after night, you guys are doing this. You guys are fighting like this.
And Ataru and Ten are very similar in terms of maturity as well, which is why they get on each other's nerves so much.
That's a joke later in this chapter, that they're on the same kind of wavelength because they're so immature.
Exactly. And Ataru is so immature that he's even keeping a victory tab in a notebook to say how many times he defeats Ten.
Yep. 5 for 5.
So now, of course, Ten wants to become stronger because Ataru is just picking on him all the time. And Ataru does pick on him a bit more. Like, sometimes Ataru is the victim and sometimes he's the perpetrator.
Yeah.
But in this stage, he's definitely more of a kind of more of the perpetrator to give 10 a bit more motivation.
I mean, he just smacks 10 while he's flying for no reason. Like, he's not bothering him at all. He just comes up from behind and smacks 10. And he sends 10 flying, like, to the roof. Like, he hits him hard. You gotta feel for 10. Like, I think he's justified in his revenge schemes. But, like, he keeps getting really hurt. Like, he gets trampled twice in this chapter by high school students who just don't notice him because I guess he's so small.
Not only that, but a turtle beats him in a race.
Yeah, like Cherry...
Like Cherry just lets a turtle go, and the turtle beats him to the park. And even the turtle's laughing at him.
Yeah, the turtle just mocks 10. And, like, that really gets to 10 because he tries to hang himself. He's, like, going to hang himself off by a rope. Which is a really dark joke for, like, this little baby kid to consider hanging himself because he lost a race to a turtle.
It is that visual gag is, once again, it's very Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Like the whole, I wouldn't call it acceptable, and it's certainly not acceptable these days. But every time like a character needs to overreact, it's either they pull out a gun against their head, or they hang a rope around a tree, and those are kind of like the two tropes. And the rope around the tree is definitely a very popular trope in manga at this time.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's slight, like it's all slapstick without long-term lasting consequences. These characters aren't gonna actually get hurt or die, no matter how much they're like trampled on or burned alive. So you can take it all in good fun because of that.
Yeah. So 10 has some iron sandals on, Geta. So he, basically doing leg day.
Yeah, I mean, Cherry gives them to him. Apparently Cherry walks around in these all the time as part of his aesthetic training. So Cherry, we don't see his bare legs often, but he must have quite the calves.
I reckon, yeah, Cherry's pretty built, I reckon. I mean, the guy, they obviously say that his age is somewhere about 200, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's
every now and again.
Very
so he's a
healthy
very
for an old
guy.
man. Yeah.
And this is one of the very few, after 10 gets sick of wearing the sandals and realizes that Cherry might be making fun of him, this is one of the very few times in Urusei Yatsura where Cherry gets his comeuppance and 10 actually just roasts Cherry.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't happen very often. Although he does get beaten a bit, he's never been electrocuted by Lum, and he usually just kind of walks out, being the comic relief. But he actually does get roasted by 10 here, which is pretty funny.
Well justified.
Yeah, in this case, definitely. So, of course, Lum decides to try and help out 10, and and working out 10 is pretty funny. He's a pretty funny guy to see.
Yeah, the great detail here is that the gear that Lum gives 10 is a clear reference to the training gear in Star of the Giants, the classic baseball series, over-the-top baseball series.
Oh, yes. Oh, I've heard of that, yes. I don't think I've ever seen that, so I probably didn't get that reference.
Yeah.
But that's,
I mean, that gear on his chest is like a clear visual homage to the gear in that series.
This, of course, ends in 10 just having enough and basically destroying the entire roof of the house.
Yeah.
Declaring that I win.
Yeah, I mean, he does. He finally got to crush Ataru. I mean, literally in this case.
Literally, yeah, the roof falls on him. And Ataru really had it coming in this episode because he was just really antagonistic towards 10 and will always take advantage of 10's bad luck. But this time was just, you don't feel bad for Ataru come the end of the chapter.
Ataru is mean to 10. He was attacking him unprovoked. I think his comeuppance here is well deserved. I just feel bad for Ataru's parents having to pay for the damages of all this.
Their insurance premiums must be through the roof.
Oh my gosh, could you only
in this case, literally. So the next chapter is Fossil Backcountry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a bit of an odd chapter. They all go on a hike, the usual team or what kind of becomes the usual team of Ataru, Lum, Shinobu, and Mendo, and occasionally 10 as well.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Cherry pops up for no reason. Yeah. They're trying to camp on have a picnic on a camping trail.
Yep, this is the gag I mentioned before. And it's worth pointing out, like, we kind of glossed over it, but, like, there was already a gag like this in the previous chapter of, like, after the group noticed that Ten's wearing the iron sandals, Cherry's face just pops up. He shocks everyone, and they're like, don't make a sudden appearance. So 2 chapters in a row, Takashi repeats this gag of, like, this big build-up, and then Cherry's face appears, and then everyone's taken aback.
And she never lets it go. It's just the way to get Cherry into a story. Yeah. Just kind of crowbar in there.
I mean, you can believe he'll just show up randomly. I mean, they justify it here by saying that he does aesthetic training on the mountain they're hiking on. And apparently he's very infamous on this mountain because there are a lot of stories about people seeing a strange old man on this mountain, to the point that a camera crew for a reality show is, like, coming to try and film this mysterious old person hiding on the mountain.
This is great. This is one of those really wacky Urusei Yatsura, like space technology chapters where they find some fossils. Mm-hmm. They dig up some fossils from the mountain, and they try and construct them in a meaningful way and effectively bring it back to life.
These are all a mishmash.
It's like this crazy ostrich sort of weird-ass looking thing.
They refer to it as kind of like a bird, a phantom bird. Like, it's a weird mishmash of different fossils that obviously don't go together. Like, the body of this thing is a triceratops head, and its face is made up of, like, a tribulite. Its horns are like ammonite fossils. Like, it's made up of different creatures, and it's all brought to life as, like, this weird chimera fossil creature by Lum. Man, I think the Galar scientists in Pokemon must have gotten all their scientific know-how how to reanimate old fossils from Lum, because considering how the Galar fossil Pokemon are also, like, mishmashes of obviously wrongly assembled skeletons of fossils, this is a very similar thing. I would not be surprised if this was another
this
Galar
does look
Pokemon.
A little bit Pokemon-esque, like proto-Pokemon. So the film crew comes up and see this weird creature that starts running amok, and of course Cherry falls out of a tree and kind of destroys the camera and all the footage.
Yeah, although it's worth noting that the reason this happens is, like, they ask Ataru's group about, like, hey, how can we lure out the mug? And Ataru says, hey, just set up some bait. So they set up the bait, but the phantom bird steals the bait. Cherry steals sausage links from the bird. The bird pecks the tree in anger, and that's why Cherry falls out and breaks the camera. Actually, the bird breaks the camera. And then they run to get a spare to try and continue filming Cherry and the bird. But unbeknownst to them, even though they dedicate themselves to staking themselves out on the mountain until they see them again, Cherry and the bird go back home with Ataru to the Moriboshi household.
I do. There is something that tickles me a little bit, seeing the television in the last few panels, because Takahashi doesn't usually do a lot with, like, the internet or television or kind of a lot of modern things, because a lot of her stories are timeless. So it's kind of good to see this kind of old 70s style television set here.
Yeah.
I used to have a television very much like this when I was growing up in the 80s, so it's kind of nice to see just that little piece of old wood-type television sitting in the corner while they're all watching it. It just tickles me a little bit there. Mm-hmm. The next one, Chapter 7, Cavity Wars, where basically what I love about the front page of this chapter, the title page, is the robot.
Yeah.
The assistant nurse robot. Just the way Takahashi does a lot of the robots just always looks kind of funny, because they've always got one big eye, almost like bolts for ears, and always claws for hands sort of thing. Like very, very kind of 60s B-movie sci-fi.
Yeah. Like, her mechanical designs are very interesting. I mean, even the dentist chair here, it looks like a very interesting contraption, like an alien dentist chair. I think it's also interesting that this chapter starts out with 3 pages of basically a dream sequence of Ataru, like, dreaming about getting a cavity and worried about Lum pulling out his teeth, which is a fear that pervades the rest of the chapter, as Ataru catches cavities from Ten, because
They're contagious. Mm-hmm. Cavities are contagious in Oni species.
Yeah.
So Ten's got it. He bites Ataru. And, of course, they all end up at school when Ataru gets a toothache. And the only way he can get rid of it is by biting someone else.
He has to bite 6 people. So...
Yep.
Ten also is there, and he bites 4 more people. So he also is on his way to getting rid of the cavities himself. But, obviously, it's a big challenge to try and bite any other else. Cherry offers himself up, but no one wants to bite Cherry, of course. But then Onsen-Mark appears, and he thinks he's won them over to the moral good of saying, hey, don't infect your other classmates, even if it's the easier solution. Do the right thing and just do Lum's solution that won't hurt anyone else. And he thinks he's won them over as they go to hug him, but no, they're actually going to all bite him.
Yeah, not only that, but Ataru's fears are realized at the end of the chapter when Onsen-Mark is being put in the dentist chair and Lum is being the actual sadistic dentist that Ataru thought she was going to be.
Yeah, she's going to pull out all of his teeth as poor
Which is
Onsen
pretty funny.
is crying for help.
There is one important little bit in this chapter that makes a point where everyone backs away from Ataru because they just know he's going to go biting people. And Ataru actually says, I'm not the kind of jerk who would bite a helpless girl just to get rid of my own toothache. And the girls go, yeah, like Moriboshi's a creep, but he's never been violent with a girl.
Yeah, he can be chivalrous sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, Ataru's not going to attack the women to do that. The men, on the other hand, no, he's going to bite Mendo the first chance he gets. Chapter 8, Wash Away the Jade Blossom in the Tub. This is a pretty fun chapter. I just like it how Lum is just bothering Ataru.
Yeah.
For the most part.
And he's looking for a
just
part-time
trying to
job.
figure out what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. And Cherry, of course, pops
it turns out he's looking for a part-time job, and Cherry literally explodes into the scene.
Yeah, with a big boom.
And explosions and everything, and he just appears there. And what Ataru wants for a job is pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course he wants
something that pays around $100 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Is easy and fun with lots of beautiful women. And not too far from home.
And meals provided. Yeah, he wants a really luxurious job. He ends up settling for a job at a public bat. Of course, an alien public bat. That pays $1,000, and he compromises on basically what amounts to 10 USD an hour because of the potential of washing the backs of beautiful women. But of course, it's not going to work out that easily for Ataru. Because the bats he washes at this place are, of course, a bunch of weird alien creatures. And I like the detail that a lot of these aliens, we've actually kind of seen these designs before in some previous chapters. Notably, there's this cyborg alien thing that's washing its back that appeared in Lum's, wedding...
The matchup
party. Yeah, the matchmaking party that her dad put on for her. That was a character design that appeared there. A lot of these character designs have appeared before in big alien group shot scenes. So I like that kind of continuity of even background characters, nameless background characters can show up again.
It is great because I do love the fact that they're not all just... It's not like Star Trek where they're all humanoid aliens. There are some really bizarre looking creatures here.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's great.
Yeah, they're just weird blobby creatures. They're robotic creatures. There's dinosaur-like creatures. All sorts of types. I like that Takashi populates her world with a lot of weird things. There's even a cat-like a creature that sort of looks like Natsuneko, but it obviously has these kind of wings. So maybe a distant relative, an alien distant relative.
So, of course, Ataru wants to get over to the women's side rather than washing the men's backs in the men's side.
He also can't figure out how to wash the men's backs because he keeps trying and they keep complaining because he gets it all wrong, including one big alien who's hey, wash my back, and Ataru thinks he's washing his back, but it's actually his belly, and then the actual back of this alien has a belly button, so it's very confusing. One detail that's also worth noting is that the bat he's working at is Ashura bats, and the proprietor is a literal Ashura, like multi-heads creature. Though obviously they look very modern, but it's a fun detail.
I do like that Ataru does eventually get over there because Ten kind of coaxes him over, saying it's paradise over there.
Yeah, he literally swims under the barrier in the bat to get to the other side. But of course, Lum forces him back.
And it at a lot of bathhouses in Japan, that is often the case. Like, it's basically one big bath. It's just segregated with a wall down the middle that is one side men's, one side women.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's big and echoey, so you don't want to gossip too loudly because you can hear people on the other side.
I love when Ataru is going to talk with Lum over the wall. Like, he climbs up the scales on the back of this dinosaur-like alien. Like, I like how he walks up this alien guy's scales, and the alien guy does not mind at all. It's just continuing to bait itself as Ataru walks up and down its scales and take its shower.
It's very, very much like a staircase, which is a great visual gag. And of course, Ben 10 and Oyuki are on the other side. Ataru is blindfolded and starts washing a statue.
Yeah. And he gets his comeuppance because 10 blows up the statue and he sinks to the bottom of the vat as the statue crushes him.
Yeah. And Lum just doesn't look like she's in any particular hurry to save him there.
Yeah, little comeuppance.
Next we've got Chapter 9, Domestic Spat Settlement. I love this chapter.
I thought you would.
I love the anime version of this chapter as well because it's got Lum's dad in there, and I just love Lum's dad.
Yeah, and this is another chapter where I'm talking about the title page, like some really creative things Takahashi does, because the clothes of Lum's parents blend in with her hair. Like, the clothes of her mom blends in with the body of her dad, and her dad's body blends in with her hair. I just love that interesting playing with shapes to, create, the bodies of other characters and connect, the forms of the other characters, just through this shared tiger stripe motif.
It looks really good. This is just a very fun chapter because Lum's dad, and you kind of also just get a hint of where Lum gets her temper from as well. And it ain't her dad.
No.
Of course, it starts with them finally eating shrimp, kind of seafood, and they're all planning to get their own share. But they've got a gatecrasher, which is Lum's dad has come to stay for a while because he was kicked out of home. And I love the scale here because Lum's dad is a big man. He's a big, beefy, Yakuza-like looking dude. And I just love the fact that this guy is kind of the head of his planet, or the head of the army on his planet. And he gets kicked out of home and just decides to, go stay with his daughter for a while. Yeah. I just love that dynamic.
I mean, he's a pig. He stole his wife's food. He is a jerk. He kind of kind of deserves it. He's acting very entirely saying, hey, I'm the breadwinner. I deserve to eat as much as I want. She's just being unreasonable. And she'll realize the error of her ways and apologize to me. And I like when he tries to give his lecture to all the boys in class of hey, don't let your wives walk all over you. You gotta stand your ground. Everyone is saying, boy, he's so pathetic.
It's great because obviously the story behind this is obviously he's got a very old-fashioned way of thinking, and even in the 80s, this was becoming a very old-fashioned way of thinking. And of course, Lum's mum doesn't take any of that shit. She just kicks him out in a great visual of him, because you don't get to see his full body very often. You only kind of see his torso and upper body. And when he kind of gets kicked out, you see him in the full body suit, in kind of a chibi form, which is very cute. They just look like big onesie pajamas.
Yeah. Lum's mom chases him out by chasing him with a broom and whacking. She clearly succeeds in whacking him on the head because he has glitter bandages when he's finally thrown out the door. I also think it's interesting that in these flashbacks, when it's just her dad and mom talking, Lum's mom speaks, English. I think it's translated for our benefit, her just speaking, normal like Japanese/English, whatever language you're reading this in. But of course, when she appears, in present time, or she interacts with other characters outside of, the Oni planet, like when she comes to Earth at the end of this chapter, like she's speaking in the Mahjong tiles again. So
yeah, and I love that. I love that detail that she never actually speaks Japanese. She never bothered learning the language because why? She doesn't live there. Why would she?
Yeah.
And I do love in this, like, because Lum's dad is in the class monitoring everything, and he's just this big, menacing presence sitting at the back of the classroom. And of course, Onsen-Mark doesn't want to blame Lum, so he just blames Ataru. Like going, it's your father-in-law, you do something about it, and then they have a bit of a confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like his speech about how to be a man, and even the women in the class think that he's just a dick.
Yeah.
And the men in the class just think, this is sad.
Yeah.
And Lum's mom turns up, and of course, speaking in the Mahjong tiles, and then gets the crap beaten out of him again because Ten was being a little snitch.
Yeah, and it's a great payoff because before Ten, got Ataru in trouble because he lied to Lum's dad about, what they were talking about in regards to him, like saying that, Ataru was insulting him. But then, of course, when Ten talks to Lum's mom, he's telling the truth. So, like,
yeah.
Lum's dad really just earned all the comeuppance he got there. Like, no exaggeration from Ten's part. Like, just pure his fault.
And no matter what he says, he's obviously still submissive to his wife because he's just running away. And he's got his little onesie pajamas on. You see his tiny, tiny little feet. He kind of looks like Chief Wiggum.
Oh,
from The Simpsons here a little bit, I think, with his tiny little hoof feet.
Yeah.
The next chapter 10, The Grateful Raccoon. So this is based on a Japanese folktale about shape-changing tanuki.
Yeah, the Grateful Swan.
Raccoon,
it's actually about the Grateful Swan, right? Because, like, it takes
a tsuru, so a crane, I think it's
crane,
meant to be.
Right, great. Grateful crane. Yeah. Because, like, originally this tanuki, when Ataru rescues it, it's in the form of this crane. And then the tanuki basically tries to act out the story of the Grateful Crane, but it fails because its transformation ability, unbeknownst to it, is not very good.
No, it basically cosplays.
Mm-hmm.
So the raccoon or tanuki can change via a leaf that it puts on its head, like that's where its magical transformation powers come from. So you'll see the leaf motif in here quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then but all he really does is just put on costumes to try and please Ataru. And Ataru just thinks it's just super ugly. And goes into the cupboard and says, you have to promise not to peek. And of course, he just fell asleep in there.
Of course, a reference to the story of Grateful Crane, where, when they peek and see that what the crane is actually doing, because the crane transformed into like a beautiful woman.
That's right. Yeah, this is a mishmash of two stories.
Yeah, so the reason why it told the person it was taking care of, like, not to look while it was doing its thing was because it, was in its true form as a crane when it's, like, producing whatever riches it was doing. Like, I think it was, like, laying eggs or something. But, yeah, so, obviously, when that secret is exposed, the crane just flew away. Here, it's like the tanuki is, like, trying to do the same thing. It's, like, literally just read the Grateful Crane storybook that Ten had and got all this idea. So it's just trying to act out the story, even though there's no reason for it. Like, there's no reason it would have to leave, like, when Ataru realizes what it's doing or whatever.
But Ataru wanted him out anyway, so
yeah,
good riddance.
And so it tries in vain, the tanuki, to like change leaves into money, but it fails multiple times, and it takes like hours, over 3 hours. So they just like look in the closet and they find that it was just sleeping. So
yeah,
like, and eventually, like it lives out the ending of Grateful Crane because like Ataru like calls it a raccoon, and so that makes it realize, wait, you know that I'm a raccoon? Oh, now that you have seen my true form, I cannot stay. So it flies off, like in the crane form again. So I just like that this tanuki, for some reason, thought that this entire time it was actually transforming to human instead of like just dressing up.
He had no idea how incompetent he was.
He really thought he had Ataru fooled.
And I just like that Ataru's just kind of had enough of this shit by the end of the chapter. He's just like, I just want this. I just get out. I want to go to bed.
Yeah, but unfortunately...
And his last line is, gross. My futon is all covered in drool.
Yeah, dang. Poor Ataru.
So, the chapter 11, which is the last chapter in this volume, is Mendo Residence Masquerade Ball.
Yeah, this one starts off with the return.
This is a very fun.
Oh yeah, this is another like crazy chapter, involves a lot of characters, and it starts with like the return of Torijima. Ten's working with Torijima as Torijima could not care less. It's just smoking a cigarette as Ten is trying to train it to help it attack Ataru, but it does not care. It's just a lazy cat.
No, he is. He's like the boss cat of the neighborhood that's kind of striped like a tiger. And he bursts the balloon with Ataru's face on it by flicking his cigarette at it.
Yeah.
Which is just, it's a great kind of Yakuza motif there, like a gangster motif.
Mm-hmm.
The Kurako turn up, and the Kurako are the servants of the Mendo household.
Namely Ryoko. They mainly serve
Ryoko. And Kurako, they're called that because they are from the old plays.
Stage plays.
They have completely dressed in black.
Yeah.
So they turn up and invite Ataru to the masquerade ball. And of course, Ataru goes, me and Ryoko sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Mendo is completely against this idea.
Yeah, of course he doesn't want Ataru anywhere near his sister. I like kind of the Chinese dress that Ryoko is wearing. Like, it's clearly got that kind of pattern in her hairstyle that way, though she's not wearing like a skirt or anything. She's wearing just like some pants, but it's a good fashion. But yeah.
It is a good look.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't really a ball, though, that they're preparing for. It's really a battle, as it turns out. Because, I mean, they don't have to dress up very elaborately, just with like a mask, and Ataru wears like this goofy cat mask with like weird eyes and teeth and whatnot. And they are given weapons, and immediately they are attacked. I like that one of the attackers is wearing like an Ultraman mask. There's some fun little masks.
Yeah, that is great. There's a lot of references. There's even more in the anime version of this.
Yeah.
And Ataru's mask is just like that of... He looks like a stray cat, effectively. Like, it's not classy at all. He just kind of puts on this like wacky cat mask, and he's like wearing a kind of like a horizontal striped t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So not very dapper or formal at all, but it works for him in this episode because everyone just attacks him.
Mm-hmm.
But then it basically becomes a giant free-for-all, and of course it's obvious who Mendo is wearing the octopus mask.
Yeah.
And they get their weapons, and this is kind of the start of the hammer versus katana here, I think.
Yeah.
Because Ataru chooses the massive mallet, whereas, of course, Mendo has his signature...
Katana.
And this happens quite a lot going forward, where Ataru just has, like, a big mallet that counters, like a big comical mallet that counters the suave Mendo's katana.
Yeah. And then Ataru, with his mallet, beats up, like, people dressed up as, like, Kintaro and... Peach Boy, and I don't know what the third one is. I can't recognize, but I think there
are some. What I'm thinking might even be some of them are. A lot of them are from folklore.
Yeah.
Like you've got Kintaro and Momotaro. Some of them. One of the masks looks like it could be like a celebrity, maybe from that particular time, or someone from the 20th century.
One of these,
but I just don't know who it is.
It's dressed like the character in Obake no Kyutaro, I'm just noticing.
It's this is just a really super fun chapter.
Yeah.
And just the fact that Mendo gets the shit beaten out of him, he's just so bad at winning.
Yeah.
And Ryoko puts on a big teary show for her brother that's had the crap beaten out of him, and she always wears that creepy skull mask as well.
Mm-hmm. And she tries to fight for her brother's honor after he's been beaten by Ataru. And fight Ataru, but of course her stage hands like hold Ataru in place so it can make it easier for her. And she uses these nunchucks, and of course she is not good at using them because she hits her own stage hands. And then, then Lum just knocks out Ataru and drags him away.
Yeah, he actually gets pretty close to Kyoko.
Yeah.
And is stopped on 2 occasions. He goes in for a flying kiss and is stopped at the very last second by Mendo grabbing his ankles, and then stopped by Lum with a big Oni
club,
a big Oni club.
Yeah.
Which is great, and of course he gets dragged away, and the fight's still going on.
Yeah.
It's a great little scene. I reckon they could have done 2 chapters out of this.
Yeah, I mean, the anime turned this into a full-fledged episode. There's a lot to flesh out here. But yeah, I mean, Ryoko chapters are great because her whole gimmick is that she's very theatrical. That's why she has these stage hands following her. That's kind of just her mannerism, is just to take things to the most dramatic extreme. And
she loves melodrama
for her own amusement. So I really thought this was another fun, chaotic Ryoko, making this high stakes situation just for crazy insanity to happen. I guess one last note, though.
What I did like about Onsen-Mark in this volume is that you do find out a little bit more about him.
Yeah.
He's trying to
be a good educator. He's trying to reach out to
He's not a bad teacher.
Yeah.
He's obviously got, a lot of problems with this class. But he does try and impress them sometimes.
Yeah.
And just by the fact that he's drinking sake on school property, you kind of just learn that little bit more about him. It's kind of a little bit sad.
Yeah, I mean,
he's kind of lonely and a bit,
yeah.
He does forgive his students, and he is, big on, important, self-important teachers, lectures and stuff like that. So
yeah.
It's nice to see him get that tiny sliver of character.
Yeah, there's a lot of humanity to Onsen-Mark. He's a strict educator, but he has his own vices. He's dealing with a lot, so of course, he wants a good drink every now and then. But what he really wants is the respect of his students. He wants to impress them by, telling them a really scary story. He wants to reach out to them and appeal to the good in them to do the right thing. He's trying his best for this class, but they're making it very difficult for him.
Extremely difficult, and because they don't respect him at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, chapter 12, Kurama again.
Yes.
So this introduces the not long lost, but it's been a while since we've seen her.
It's been about 5 volumes. The 3rd chapter of volume 2 was her last appearance, and this return arc for Kurama does indeed reference her last appearance, so it's a nice bit of continuity there. But one really interesting thing to note about this chapter is that I believe in its original publication, Shonen Sunday, it was published in color. I believe the first couple pages were full color, but as we go on the rest of the chapter, it probably was partial color. The kind of red and grayish tones they would do back in the 80s when they wanted to publish a chapter full color, quote unquote, but it's not a full spectrum of colors. It's one hue of red and then grays, but it's in color technically. And you can tell that this was probably published in color just by the quality of the art. There's a little bit of blurring on the line work, and it definitely feels like a big contrast compared to the traditional black and white artwork, which, if we compare with the rest of the chapter, looks a lot cleaner. This definitely looks like a lot of this was drawn in perhaps watercolor. Takahashi would go to that, but some sort of style, some sort of pen work that has aged a bit, that has led to kind of this sort of blurring effect on the line work after all these years.
Yeah, and it is interesting to note that they did release 2 volumes of all of the Urusei Yatsura that was in, quote, full color, end quote, in 2 parts in Japan recently, and they did actually release it in the West, but in French.
Oh.
Not English.
Man, I wish we would get color pages in these releases, because I would really love to see this artwork in full color, or the color was originally printed in. The Dragon Ball of these omnibuses, based on the Kanzenbans in Japan, they retain a lot of the original full color chapters, which are really interesting to read. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And I especially would have loved to see this opening 2-page spread in color, because it's such a beautiful composition. Really a sequence of, comics paneling. It's so great. Like, this first panel, we're seeing from a low-angle shot the tennis ball fly high up in the air. Then we see Lum in a big pose transposed on this in the background. It's just such a great way to indicate this sequence of events here. We see Lum prepare to strike the ball. Then we go to what is in the main background of this 2-page spread is just the scene of Lum hitting the ball towards Shinobu, and we're seeing through the arc of the ball and its direction towards Shinobu, it guides our eye to the Shinobu's big pose on this page, where we see the ball hit the ground, go past her, and it's such a great way to lay out this page and communicate the sequence of events. I just absolutely love this illustration.
It's great because it also tells you exactly everything you need to know. They're in the forest, so they're obviously not in the city. They're playing a high-class sport, which is, back in the 80s, tennis was a very kind of high, upper-class or upper-middle-class sort of sport that a lot of people who wanted to be seen as, perhaps wealthy or wealthier than they were would play this sport a lot. I played... I was forced to play tennis by my parents in the late 80s and early 90s. They thought it would be a very good experience and a good social experience for me. I hate tennis now.
Well, AC, I'm a child of the late 90s, but my parents also made me play tennis, and not only that, they made me play golf as well. Yeah.
Oh, so you got the double there.
Oh, yes, yes. All of the so-called sports that are popular with the upper class, or at least businessman types, since my dad works at a business school. But yeah, I think that this definitely tells us that Mendo probably took the gang out to play tennis here, considering, who else would build a giant tennis court in the middle of a forest? But it's also an interesting true line because, of course, in Maison Koku, Mitaka, Godai's rich rival, he is a professional tennis coach. So, yeah, interesting connection there of, tennis being associated with the rich or upper class in Takashi series.
I think that's kind of important to note because golf is a super important networking sport for businessmen, especially in Japan. And tennis is a little bit more relatable.
Yeah.
I suppose it's a little bit more something that, regular people can do, because it requires a smaller space, you only need a racket, not a whole set of clubs.
Yeah.
And younger people were kind of more into tennis than golf at the time.
It definitely tracks with how it's presented in Maison Koku too, because Mitaka is mainly coaching, very young adult women. So, yeah, it's more of a sport for the young, more of a casual type of sport rather than this networking type of sport.
Yeah, definitely. So the next page we've got Kurama, who's obviously in a stasis pod, in suspended animation. A clever little detail is that you kind of see an alarm clock next to her.
Yeah.
In the pod, as if it's going to wake her up sometime soon. The crow minions are there, and they've got a bit more of a character this time. You've got the overseer, old wise man, who's ordering everyone around.
He's set
and
in the
young
ways
laborers.
of these rules and traditions that he doesn't understand, but he just perpetuates because that's what he's always done. Meanwhile, you have his young subordinates who are really getting fed up with all these pointless rules, and they just want to get the job of getting Kurama hooked up over it so they can go home. And you definitely see their tiredness comes through with the fact that they're smoking these giant cigarettes. I mean, in proportion to them, they're human-sized cigarettes, but they're the size of their own bodies. And they're they take frequent smoke breaks to express their disdain, their lack of interest and investment in this, and they just want to get this over with. So as soon as they see
there's a lot of working class undertones here.
Yeah. They're very resentful of the boss, who does nothing, as we see. It's all the crow servants, they're carrying this capsule pods through the forest. I don't know why they're carrying it through the forest, but they are. And all the elder Tengu is doing is that he's just guiding them, or rather, he's just ordering them around while blowing a whistle. He's not putting in any work into actually lifting this. So he very much deserves
no effort.
When the tennis ball hits one of the subordinates and the capsule comes crashing down and sliding down the hill, to also get caught up in that and taken for a ride and get conked out when it crashes.
And of course, it falls on Mendo. Ataru does a half-assed way of trying to warn him, which is also kind of funny. But as soon as he sees it's Kuruma, he just goes straight in for the kiss. Like, he knows the rules, he knows what's going on, and he goes right in. And just the translation here of Mendo, who pushes Ataru aside immediately and says, "Wowza."
Yeah. Like, he immediately forgets his anger to Ataru for not warning him adequately, and he's just transfixed with a very beautiful woman. Very Mendo.
And of course there's a bit of discussion. Yeah, very Mendo. And wowzer is something that I associate deeply with Inspector Gadget.
Yeah.
Because he used to say wowzers a lot. Yeah. So there might be a bit of a reference there from the translators. Once again, as you said, very 80s. There's a bit of back and forth between Ataru and the Crow minions. And of course, Ataru immediately kind of pops the capsule open and immediately goes in for a kiss. But it's important to note that this is happening right after her last appearance.
Yes. They make reference to, like, literally the reason why she's in the capsule is a consequence of her last appearance of being basically stuck in the hot spring after during the entire chapter where Ataru, they were in, like, this snowy they were going skiing, and then they encountered this woman in the lodge, and, like, during that entire chapter, like, Kurama was divorced from the main plot because she was stuck, like, in this hot spring because it was so cold she didn't want to get out, and so she was stuck there the entire time. And it's interesting because we see in the hot spring with her some cameos. Jotaro from the Bad Boy Musashi street party we talked about, and the Grateful Tanuki that tried to repay Ataru's kindness as well. So those are, like, some fun little.
And I think this is kind of explains why she was in the forest. Because, this is probably a spring chapter because they were out playing sport. The snow's melted. She was finally able to get out of the hot spring.
Yeah.
She wanted a do-over, so they put her back into suspended animation, and she just happened to be in the same forest.
Yeah, but it's interesting, like, they've been carrying her through this forest for, I mean, it's been years since Kurama's last appearance. Obviously, in series,
it really has been years, yeah.
It can't have been that long. It was probably only, like, a few months. But still, just for a few months, they've been just carrying Kurama, like, through this hill. Like, man, you'd think that they would have just called the spaceship over and been more efficient about it, but no, I guess they really want to just do this manual labor. I guess Kurama really couldn't get out of the hot spring, so they had to wait till it got warmer. Then they put her in the capsule immediately to carry out there. I guess we do see that it does look to be springtime when she's put in the capsule. So I guess she waited for months for the snow to melt, for it to get warm before going in there. Like, the timeline, the continuity of this is very funny when you scrutinize it. Also,
when you look at how long Urusei Yatsura actually goes for, and the continuity, of course, it's what we call a floating timeline, because Ataru is always 17 years old. And he's always in the second year of high school.
Yeah.
He never graduates. He never goes any further.
I think they get into their third year at some point, don't they? I feel like we have seniors at some point, don't they? Towards the end? I'm not...
I think... No. I think everything kind of remains... It's kind of very much... A lot of this is Looney Tunes in the fact that, there's a lot of violence. It often ends on...
Yeah...
a silly note that when nothing is resolved, but, if an important character is introduced or reintroduced, it does show its continuity there a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's very animated sitcom-y, characters don't really age that much, even though their situations may change, and you would think that some time has passed, and even though multiple occasions of the same holiday pass, somehow there's continuity
Christmas
with
several
that,
times.
even though there's continuity with that, this has happened before, that I'm celebrating this holiday this way, but it isn't a year later or years later, even though this holiday keeps happening. It's like how in American Dad, there's like this giant story arc of like the Smith family having a conflict with Santa Claus, and it builds upon it year after year, but it's not like the character's age. Like, it's not like Steve grows out of high school or Haley finally graduates college or anything. so it's kind of like that.
No, it just kind of floats around.
Yeah.
I kind of like that, because Urusei Yatsura started off as a very kind of 70s look at what was going on in Japan at the time.
Yeah.
And then it didn't really kind of take off until the 80s. It took off a little bit before then, but it wasn't serialized to the extent.
Yeah.
Like, Urusei Yatsura was a very kind of contained storyline that had more or less a conclusion.
Yeah.
In its first initial run in 1978.
I think it definitely does adapt with the years, though, to, adopt, like, what is going on in the culture of the time. So, in that way, it also reflects, like, how a sitcom will also adapt to changing technology and stuff. It doesn't stay stuck in the same year, even though the characters aren't aging. I think, like, a great example of this, to go back to, I guess, another manga comparison, is Detective Conan. Like, that started in 94, where they didn't really have, like, a lot of cell phones or all the technology you have now. And now if you read Detective Conan, the technology is of the modern day, even though in story, the month should only have been a couple months that have actually progressed in the timeline. So
that dude should have died of old age by now. I'm just saying, even if he magically went to being back to being a kid, he would be older, literally, by now than he was when he started.
He would have died in his 30s, you're saying? Or, like, yeah.
Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I hate Detective Conan.
Oh, no. Oh, man.
And one of the reasons I hate this is I think because it's oversaturated in Japan.
I can see that,
like,
yeah. I mean, it's been going
Detective
on for 25
Conan,
years.
and it's just, nothing really happens. And I did used to watch it a bit with my wife, because my wife really likes it. But after a while, it was just like, it's like going, nothing ever happens, and they keep teasing that something's going to happen, and oh my god, I just somebody kill this kid, come on.
I mean, things do happen in Detective Conan, but yes, it takes a long time for those things to happen. It really has dragged out its story. I love Conan myself.
Literally decades.
Yeah. I mean, I love Conan myself, but yes, I mean, I think that's a fair complaint, that these storylines they tell in that series take literal years and they are constantly interrupted by, especially in the anime, a lot of filler that is not really advancing the plot at all. But Urusei Yatsura, luckily, as an episodic story, doesn't really have that problem. It also ended after 10 years, so it did not overstay.
Yeah, exactly. It was only around for about a decade.
No, it's not like it was The Simpsons that it's still on. Though Simpsons goes up and down. Regardless, one thing I wanted to point out before the flashback of what was going on in Kurama is that when the servants noticed that the elder Tengu was conked out, they start kicking him, beating him with a hammer, calling him Slayer and Fat Cat. Like, a lot of worker aggression being, given some catharsis.
Workers rise up, I like it.
Yes. So good. But then they notice Mendo is very handsome, and it's like, oh, this guy is pretty enough. The princess likes superficial good looks. Yeah, he'll do. And they try to force him to kiss Kurama, even though Mendo, he has his reservations. Even though he's a womanizer, Mendo is kind of a little bit prudish. I mean, he doesn't like to engage in public displays of affection, so with all the people watching,
Mendo's all show.
Yeah,
I think Mendo wants the love of women without actually committing to anything.
Yeah.
Whereas Ataru kind of wants the love of women and is prepared to commit to just about anything.
Oh yeah, Ataru is much more shameless than Mendo. Mendo tries to keep on the airs of propriety at the very least, but. Yeah. Even though he has his reservations, it doesn't take that much effort to convince him to go in for the kiss. But of course, Shinobu foils him from literally pulling him away, and that gives Ataru the opportunity, while still wrapped up in the fishnet. He literally just jumps up with Lum still clinging on him to jump at Kurama and kiss her smack down on the lips once again. So even though Kurama went through this entire scheme to try to get someone else to kiss her, to find a new destined partner, it's just Ataru all over again. They really are. Their destinies really are intertwined.
there is a destiny there between them. Not a good one. It's just a destiny. Yeah. That no matter what she does, she always kind of winds up stuck in the middle of a Ataru.
Yeah, she's just caught up in his misfortune. That's their relationship. Yeah. But she wakes up and notices Mendo, and she thinks, oh, hey, this must be the guy who kissed me. He's a total dream. But yeah, we did it. I gambled with destiny. I won. And the Tengu servants are like, let's not tell her the truth. You know, they feel bad that she's under this misassumption, but they aren't going to tell her the truth because it's easier if things proceed like this than having to deal with Ataru all over again.
And the next chapter is sealed with a kiss. Yeah. I love Lum's expression here.
Yeah, she's like
just like going, haha, go
for it. Like she's cheering him up because like if they seal the deal, then that means Ataru won't be able to go after Kurama anymore. So like she's all for it, and that's definitely holds true throughout the chapters. Like in Kurama's scheme to hook up with Mendo, she's like, yeah, go for it. Hey, the covenant or the chamber that you're building to have sex in is built. Like, go in, you know? But yeah, I like this cover's page too, because it's like painting the heroine is Kurama, hero is Mendo, villain is Ataru. Ataru's being like pulled back by the crow servants. I love this very artful illustration of
it's kind of gone with the wind between Kurama and Mendo.
And just these beautiful leaves and vines and grapes, encompassing them, like surrounding them. It's really stunning. It's a good contrast between like them drawn like prettily like this, and then of course Lum and Ataru in the background drawing more in Takashi's conventional style.
And we've got this kind of starts with a bit of a recap of what happened last time, which we don't really need to talk about. But we've got the crow minions, the Tengu, are just kind of hanging out, and they're complaining about being worked overtime without pay.
Like we mentioned, like they're smoking human-sized cigarettes, complete with using a human-sized lighter. Again, it's like the size of their body, and they're throwing up big wafts of smoke. Like they really want to numb themselves with the nicotine here. One thing that's interesting to me is that one of these crow servants start beginning to address Mendo by a nickname of Old Pompadour. I guess Mendo has a pompadour. It's not that pronounced, but yeah.
No, it's kind of funny though.
I wonder what in the original Japanese the nickname was.
Yeah, I really need to get my hands on the original volumes legally, so I can kind of translate this as I go along a bit more. Because I'm sure that there's some translations here that obviously they need to take a bit of
liberty, yeah.
They need to take on a little bit of Western style just to make things kind of flow a little bit better. Sometimes they kind of lean in one direction more than the other one, or sometimes they just go for a hard and fast straight translation, which also I find doesn't always work. But, that's just one of the trappings of being a translator, I suppose. What's great here is that they've got a panel discussion about the proper dating etiquette.
Yeah, and of course...
And Lum is just off to the side building a gun.
She's prepping her gun to shoot at Kurama when she comes around in. I think it's interesting. I think this is the first time we are shown that Shinobu is also the secretary in the student council. So it's basically the student council is all our main characters. Ataru's cousin, Mendo's vice president. Yeah,
she's the secretary, isn't she? That's right.
And all the class... Ikosi is pointing this out. It's like, this entire... All the people putting on this panel... they all have terrible dating etiquette. Like, this is kind of, how are we supposed to learn from you guys, like, proper dating etiquette when you have such bad ones? And then it gets into an argument about, like, comparing Mendo and Ataru. And the girls, of course, come to Mendo's defense saying, unlike Moroboshi, Moroboshi is driven by pure libido. Mendo isn't. He's a man of principles. Actually, I want to go back a page just to comment on the crow servants again, this really pronounces their tiredness, because they're like telling the elder, let's just keep our mouths shut and have Kurama consummate with Mendo so we can go home. Like, their tiredness really coming out here. And they also let slip that they're not working with overtime pay, so another grievance that onto the pile. there. They are.
I think that means that they're not motivated.
Yeah.
Like, they don't care about doing a good job. They just want to get the job finished.
Like, the elder is such a bad boss. But, yeah, I mean, he also is so bad at his job, and he's so inattentive that he let Kurama leave already to go see Mendo. Which brings us back to the classroom scene. So, Mendo is lamenting that he let his own principals hold him back from kissing Kurama. And, of course, Lum is preparing to shoot Kurama when she comes around with her gun. And speak of the devil, big gust of wind blowing through the classroom, causing a huge mess, toppling desks. Kurama has come to the class, and Lum points her gun at her. But Otaru gets in the way.
I just love the fact that Lum is once again committed, like, is willing to commit, like, murder in cold blood.
Yeah, she really is. Like, this is a side of Lum we have not seen, I guess, since Kurama's last appearance. Like, this era of, like, Lum being so overprotective of Otaru, or so jealous of other women that she will outright try and kill them.
And I think one of the things that kind of sets it off here is that Lum, despite the fact they are in school and she is a member of school, she's not in school uniform. She's just in her normal bikini. So I think that kind of demonstrates that she's ready for action.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, she could probably fight better in her regular bikini rather than the school uniform, for sure. Probably more moves.
So of course, Kurama shows up and everyone goes, "Oh, what's your relationship to Mendo?" And, Mendo's quite okay with the little hug he gets. And they keep trying to silence Otaru, who's trying to tell them the truth.
Yeah, they also are trying
Otaru is the truth.
Silence the elder because they tied him up, and they're lying to Kurama saying, "Oh, he's asleep because he's so relieved you found such a wonderful new suitor, and he's probably not much longer." I wonder if they would outright try to murder the elder just to get him out of the way. They have so much disdain for him, but they really try to put on the celebratory act here. Like they're literally throwing confetti around Kurama and Mendo when she's hugging Mendo, and when she's saying, I finally found my prince. But, yeah. And
it's funny because, Lum, who is willing to commit murder, is now, going, "Oh, I'll help you have a bridal chamber."
Oh, yeah, she's, clapping.
It's basically,
she's, clapping.
A giant sphere which they can consummate in.
Oh, my gosh, she, claps when they make the vow to, have a kid. She's very happy with this development. It's not just Otaru they try to silence either. They also try to silence Shinobu when she tries to speak up. They really don't want anyone to get in the way. They just want this over with. But yeah, Lum does help build the love nest, which does creep Mendo out. That they're they build it in the schoolyard. And so... she expects...
It's going to be one of the least romantic places on Earth.
She expects Mendo and her to have sex in, this capsule, in front of their school, that is being watched by other people. And I like the way that she just, goes about just talking about what they're doing. She uses words like creating progeny is a holy right. You young have first day on it. She treats this kind of
they skip around the word sex is what they're doing. Yeah. It's they don't want to mention it by name.
Her approach and the way she thinks about sex is very much, this is a sacred activity that is also a means to an end. So it's even though
it's a royal right.
Yeah, even though it's clear she herself is also just into it for the idea of just having sex with a handsome dude,
Yeah, it's very, very superficial.
Yeah.
I love that Otaru, of all people, calls Lum a traitor here when she's helping to build this. And of course, Mendo starts to chicken out. He's getting cold feet. He just keeps trying to run away, and she is literally dragging him to this love hotel.
Yeah, she whacks him with a hammer to knock him out so that she can drag him.
There is actually a little bit of fourth wall breaking here, wherein Mendo is actually leaving the panel.
Oh my gosh, that's so
on the
good.
Next page, Mendo is actually trying to get out of the panel itself.
Yes.
And so his arm is actually extending, out of the book, which is really funny.
I love that so much. It's also worth noting inside the love nest is, baby toys and a sign that says abundant fertility and like a drawing of a kitten. It's like it's both like, I guess, a sex chamber, but it's also going to eventually serve as the baby's crib, I guess, with all these toys. It's very weird.
This is kind of a reference also to a love hotel, which
do love hotels have baby toys? Like, there's literally a pacifier in here.
But they do have massive beds and chandeliers and weird pictures on the wall. They don't usually say abundant fertility, mind you. But there are a whole host of very interesting and strange love hotels all across Japan. In case you don't know what a love hotel is, it's a hotel where you can stay overnight, sure, but you can also go there for a rest. For 4 or so hours during the day for like 4,000 yen or something like that, like $40. You can go there with your partner of choice and just relax. And a lot of these places also like look very flash on the inside and have spas and massive beds and karaoke and stuff like that. They're one of the things that I actually really miss about Japan, because there's no way you could get away with something like that in Australia. You just have people camped outside them at all times to witness all the infidelity that was going on. But Japanese people are a lot more subtle than that, apparently. So once again, this kind of ends with Mendo basically trying to skip out, and Kurama learns the truth.
Yeah, I like that this is a payoff of the runner of people interrupting other people when they're speaking. When they're trying to tell the truth. Like, in this case, the payoff here is that Ataru does complete the truth. Instead of, like, before everyone is interrupting, we're just, like, yelling over people when they're trying to say the truth. Like, Ataru does yell over the elder, but, like, he basically does confirm, like, yes, he was the one who kissed her. So it's a good payoff there to that running gag. But yeah, Kurama is very shaken up about it. And so she just shuts everyone out of the love nest and then just sleeps in it with like an ice pack over her head because she's like sick. She thinks she's having a nightmare. But that does bring us to the final chapter of this 3-parter, Goodbye Covenant.
This is great. It starts off with Kurama just basically throwing darts at Ataru's face, which is... it's a very kind of... Takahashi does this quite a lot in her... in a lot of her manga, is just like, if you hate someone, here is a very visual representation of the fact that you hate them. He's literally just throwing darts at someone's face.
And it's like an interactive monitor, though, because like the Ataru on the screen... He catches her dart in his teeth and spits it out and then blows a kiss at her, which takes her aback. So why would they program this AI why would they program this like an AI that has sentience? Why isn't this just a picture of Ataru? It's an AI that can react to things being thrown at it or interacting with it.
What's great here is that they keep reiterating that it's the law. It's the law. These are the rules. You have to follow the rules. Ataru has kissed you twice. There are no more do-overs. You can't do it again. And so they try and discover, hang on a minute. Like, this is the law. Where does the law come from? Why is this the law? Like, they actually start questioning things.
Yeah.
So they decide to go back into the database and they go back through, like, the elder ancestral elder, and the elder ancestral elder, and the elder ancestral elder. Which is actually quite difficult to say.
Yeah, we are not going to try and describe who the eldest of these elders are, because there are 120 generations of these elders. So, like, G has to go through all of them, but while he's doing that, Kurama leaves. I do think it's also interesting, like, these elders, like, just like that Ataru on the dartboard, I guess these are also, like, AI with their own ability to interact with people, because they can communicate with... like the people who are asking them information, and they react like people, like they get kind of flustered and they sweat inside the screen and stuff. So it's very goofy. It's like they're AI, but I guess they have been programmed with the memories and the personalities of all these previous elders. So like with the final elder,
I think is a clever idea.
Yeah,
it's a good bit of exposition there.
Yeah.
So 10 turns up for the first time in quite a few chapters, actually.
Yeah, and he's like blown...
It's always good to have a bit of a break from 10, I find.
Yeah, but I think
he's funny, but
I think he's used well here. He's caught up in this tornado created by Kurama on her way to school.
I like how Mendo recognizes the tornado, and then he immediately whips out a comb and starts brushing his hair. And so, of course, Kuruma comes back and just, starts hamming it on with Mendo again.
Yeah, but then Ten wakes up and then he proposes to Kurama. He says, marry me. Of course, Ten is like an easily infatuated little kid. But it's like a great, parody of, what's been going on with this entire Kurama storyline. It's like Kurama, when the first person she sees when she wakes up, she has to marry. And in this case, Ten wakes up, and the first person he sees is Kurama, and he asks her to marry him. So it's funny play there.
It's kind of Kurama is very cute when Ten wakes up, and she just goes, "Where did that come from?" Which is usually, what someone would say to her.
Yeah, she doesn't take
Ten
that seriously.
I don't know. She's drawn kind of with full lips and like a concerned look on her face, which I think is kind of nice there.
Yeah.
I just kind of like the art style that they went for. And of course, she's kind of just ignoring the rules now.
No, she just wants to consummate with Mendo. Truth. I also like that there's week-to-week continuity here, because they make reference to the last chapter as happening last week. So, that fits in with the continuity established in the beginning of the chapter, where Kurama has not eaten for 3 days. So, I like this interesting consistency with the passage of time, even though time technically does not pass in the series year to year. But yeah.
This is great because Ten asks what's going on and goes, "Consummate? Wait, what does consummate means?" and just, I think Takahashi just loves drawing these expressions on people. Mm-hmm. Like, super angry or super surprised or super shocked.
Yeah.
With those backgrounds that just go Kong or bang.
Yeah. And Ten is saying, "No, don't make a baby with a Mendo. It'll just turn out to be an idiot because those guys are idiots. I'm the one who can make you happy. And it's consummate with me." It's like this. Ten does not clearly know what he's talking about. He doesn't know what it means to make a baby, but he's just very infatuated with Kurama. It's just like when they went to see that porno film, which Sakura, Ten was watching it the whole time. He was so bored he didn't understand what was going on.
So, I mean, he still is just a kid, effectively. And of course, Ataru and Mendo, start trying to grab at Kuruma, who just kind of has this brainwave of, these two guys are pretty much the same, but she also comes to her own conclusion of, I like handsome, superficial men.
Yeah. That's all she cares about.
And then just kind of buggers off.
That's really all she cares about. Just the fact that Mendo is attractive. Yeah. She could care less about the personality at this point. But then, G broadcasts image of the eldest elder, the 120 generations ago elder, the first generation, using, a projector, basically.
A hologram projector,
and he basically shares the story that the reason this whole tradition started, this whole covenant, that the first person you see when you wake up you marry, is because one day he was walking in the woods, he came across a sleeping crow girl, and he kissed her, and then she woke up. Eventually they got married. So this entire tradition was started by an act that, let's face it, was an act of sexual assault. That
yes,
and it worked out.
Basically, a fairy tale.
It was the wrong thing to do. It was very creepy, but yeah. So he created this law in honor of his own personal treasured memory. So he's basically forced everyone to follow along with this in honor of his own relationship with his wife, and everyone forgot over the 120 generations, and so they've been pointlessly following the tradition that did not need to be there. There's no consequences for it at all. It's just sentimental for a guy who did a creepy thing. And then Kurama's like, "I'm not okay. So this is clearly bullshit. This law. I'm just gonna have relations with Mendo.
Just gonna have sex with whoever I want."
Yeah, but
let's go for it.
Then puts a giant container over Mendo.
A giant bell over Mendo, who is claustrophobic, and then she just leaves saying, "I don't like pathetic men."
Yeah, and now her standards, she is no longer willing to settle. She's going to get everything she wants in a man. Strong, smart, tough, handsome, a gentleman, and you know what? Good for her.
Yeah. It turns out that when she turns up later on, the only thing she really wants is actually just handsome.
Yeah, she reverts. Like, she is ultimately a superficial person in of herself. She just likes people with good looks.
Yeah, just like pretty much everyone else in Urusei.
Yeah, I think overall this story arc was a funny commentary, though, on like these archaic traditions that force women in particular into these specific roles of trying to like having to settle for a mate, which is just, it's like, this entire storyline is like men trying to control who Kurama shacks up with, and ultimately it ends with her finally shedding the shackles of this like archaic patriarchal tradition and like finally being able to like pursue her own like sexual interests. So I appreciate that. It's like a funny little commentary there.
And it very much is a commentary on a lot of misogynistic behavior in Japan as well.
Oh yeah.
It's especially, like, it's getting better, but incredibly slowly. And recently, we're recording this when the head of the Olympic Committee in Japan came out and said, women talk too much.
What the fuck?
This is an 82-year-old politician who came out and said, women need to know their place, they talk too much.
What the hell? Please.
Everyone in Japan just went, I hate this guy so much, he needs to quit.
Yes.
And he comes out and goes, I'm sorry, that's not what my comment said. And the IOC came out and said, he apologized, so it's fine. And 97% of Japanese people want this guy to resign, and he's refusing to resign.
Oh my god, that is so maddening. Yeah. What?
It's been very frustrating to watch for the past few days, let me tell you. But it sparked a conversation in Japan where it's like, Japan is ranked, in terms of equality between men and women, 121st in the world, which is pretty bloody low for a first world country.
Yeah, like what?
Yeah, and it's maddening to watch, but at least it's started this conversation of women are just kind of like going, why do we keep letting this happen? Like, why are these people in power?
Yeah.
I really hate these types of people.
Like, this freaking culture of like protecting these shitty, sexist men in power is so egregious. Like this, man, the whole controversy, was it Tokyo U that was like purposely lowering the test scores of female applicants to the university so to make male scores look better?
Yeah, I don't think it was Tokyo U, but it was a very prestigious medical university.
It was a prestigious medical university.
And they were specifically denying applications from women because women quit too early because they want to have kids and retire early and stuff like that. It's like, and of course, all they did was they bowed their head and apologized, and probably nothing's changed.
God damn it.
Very, very, very frustrating.
Yeah.
So the next chapter is, it's a summer chapter, Message in a Bottle.
This two-part is so good. Yes.
They find a bottle floating in the sea. They're obviously on vacation. It's the 4 plus 10. Because 10 isn't always part of the 4.
And it's a love letter in the bottle, and 10 thinks Shinobu because he found it, it's for him. Of course, the other are credulous. They don't really believe him. They don't even know, hey, it's not even for a girl, who cares? So 10 is convinced, but they go back to their inn, and they ask the innkeeper, like, is there any sights to see here? And there's nothing but the sea, but there's an inlet there, and the innkeeper's like, hey, don't go to the Cockle Inlet. And then a bunch of other people who are working at this inn, like the chefs and other staff come under. They all claim, like, don't go there because there's a monster that's going to eat you there. But they all have different opinions of who the monster is. One person says it's the ghost of a giant ugly man. Other person says it's a gorgeous woman. Another person says it was a creepy old granny. So they all start arguing, and while they're doing that, the kids just leave. And then later on, 10 is in the bat, like, all 3 of the boys are in the bat, and 10 is just, like, singing back the words in the love letter to himself, like, I love you, I long for you. He's annoying Ataru. But then, suddenly, another love letter bottle pops up and hits Ataru in the back of the head from, like, the mouth of the fountain in the bat, and then he opens it up, and it's a telephone number that says, call me. And so he gets excited about that and then goes to call. But then Mendo is also, like, incredulous. He doesn't believe, like, it's going to come to anything. So he thinks it's clearly a prank. So he goes to the vending machine, but then instead of whatever he was going to buy, another love letter in a bottle pops up. He opens it and it says that, I want to spend the night with you. And so, he at first is like, this is quite the elaborate kind, but he's taken in, enchanted by the opportunity. So Ataru calls the phone number that was in the love letter, and then apparently the person wants to meet them at Cockle Inlet. And so they all start fighting over who this mystery girl really wants to meet. Because clearly it's all from the same person, because the handwriting's the same. So Ataru and Mendo begin, saying this is a showdown between you, who's going to, get with this girl. And Ten is, not really taken seriously as part of this, love competition. And when he tries to burn them, they stick bottles of water in his mouth so he can't let out his flames. And then the next morning, Taru tries to get up at the crack of dawn to sneak away before the others get up, but Ten and Mendo have cleverly tied a string to Ataru's foot so, they are dragged along with him when he tries to leave. Taru just notices, of course.
There's already a trap waiting for him outside, which wakes up
Lum and
Shinobu.
That rings a bunch of chimes that alerts them that Ataru is escaping. And so, Ataru runs away and he wakes up Ten and Mendo because their heads get, bashed when he's running down the stairs. So he's woken up from that jumble. And so they all run off to the inlet, and I love how Mendo and Ataru are brushing their teeth while on the way there. They're such in a hurry. They decide, no, we gotta brush our teeth on the way before meeting this girl.
There's a great little bit here where Mendo is still asleep, being dragged, but he's combing his hair.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes.
He's combing his hair in his
what
sleep.
A narcissist.
Which is just a nice little... Just such a nice little nod there to the type of superficial person that Mendo truly is. They meet the woman, of course, and it's a beautiful lady with shells in her hair.
Yeah, shells in her hair, and her dress is also shell-teen, which is so cool with these characters who work at this inn. Both her and the old lady also has a clamshell teen dress, which is very interesting. And it's a very cool hint to their identities too. But yeah.
Yeah, so they go to the new inn.
Yeah, she's played them. All these letters were just promotional letters for this inn. So they're intoxicated by her, of course. So they all go to the Pension Kaka, which I love the design of this building. Again, it's this house enclosed in a clamshell. It looks super, super cool. It's a great design.
And there is an old woman there, as per the legends, and on the very last page there is a giant man there as well.
Yeah.
And it just looks like they're there to eat them. And he's literally grinding an axe.
Yeah.
He's sharpening an axe, ready to do them in, and it's ended on a bit of a cliffhanger.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm glad that this storyline continues into the next chapter. We see what happens in Ghastly Gastronomy, which has a great horror movie-esque kind of title page. It's particularly with Shinobu reacting to the shadow of the man approaching on her, but also the silhouette of the elderly woman peering at Mendo and Ten too. And Lum is of course looking ready to pounce at Ataru for holding hands with the innkeeper girl.
So this is very much kind of a horror. There's a lot of allusions here to horror films of the time, it's really funny. The way they're drawn as these kind of nasty people who are just ready to eat them, and they're arguing about who they're going to eat, and the old granny's going to have the handsome one and the baby, and the big guy's going to have the girls.
Yeah, and then that leaves the girl with just Ataru, and she's not happy with that because girls are tough and sinewy. She would have rather had the baby or the girl, but of course, she's kind of outnumbered by the woman and the man in their interest, and so she has to kind of just go along with what they want, and she gets the scraps essentially. But I love this joke of the man is licking his blade, and then Ataru comes back and opens the door, and he cuts because the guy was on the other side of the door, he cuts his tongue on the knife, and so his tongue starts bleeding. Like, they really give these, like, murderous cannibals, like, a run for their money here, and this is just the start of it.
So they go in for some dinner, and she leaves a note in Ataru's...
I want to mention this great joke at the dinner scene. Like, we're seeing, like, we're seeing the man and the woman, like, lick their lips, watching... like their prey eat dinner. Like, the man is watching the girls, the woman's watching Ten and Mendo. But when it gets to the girl, like, she's not looking at her lips. Ataru's licking her lips, looking at her. She's just kind of creeped out a bit. But she does.
It's a great visual gag there. And none of it's subtle. Like, none of these guys are subtle.
Not at all. But yeah, she gives him the note in the miso soup to meet her alone later.
Of course, he hides it from Lum. Mm-hmm. Lum doesn't really feel like anything's wrong because she's not really threatened. She's never really threatened by anything that happens on Earth.
Yeah, I mean, there's no danger to her, honestly. Like, she's not creeped out by this at all. She's probably dealt with, like, stranger stuff in space anyway than these people. Yeah. So, but Shinobu is on edge, and so they hear some creaking, Lum and her, near their room. And when their door opens, like, it's just Mendo and Ten looking for Ataru, but Shinobu has been so freaked out, she lifted up her entire brain and was about to bash them with it, which is great. But, yeah, they suspect Ataru is going to snuck off to meet with the girls, so, you know, Lum, I love how she, like, is, like, stomping down the stairs, so mad, while Mendo and Ten follow casually. But while they leave Shinobu alone, like, she's approached by... from the shadows, the man who has prepared a bath for her. Although he very obviously, like, says he's prepared a brat, but I guess Shinobu does not find that suspicious until she goes into there. But yeah, while they go outside looking for Ataru, the granny has intercepts Mendo, and she has carrying this water and it's like saying that she went to town to get them one. She asks him to carry her back, and then while Mendo is carrying her, you know, on his back, like, she tries to chomp down into him. And, like, I think Mendo is just thinking that she's trying to be frisky with him. And he's just like, hey, don't get around. Yeah,
like, you're too old for this kind of behavior.
But her teeth aren't strong enough to chomp into him. So, yeah, they have to cook him. And then we get Shinobu in the bat, and it's like, this water is weird. It's like fish broth. So she gets out, and then she encounters, like, like a mixture waiting for her to rub into her skin after bathing, which is like salt, flour, and butter. So it's like, she hasn't really figured it out yet, but then the guy is pouncing on her, and then we cut away from there just to go to a scene with Ataru alone with the girl. And, you know, they get to talking, and she laments about being mistreated by the others, and then sticking with her with the yucky expression. Ataru's sympathetic, even though she's talking about him as being the gross thing she has to, like, eat. But then, of course, you know, Lum intercepts and shocks both her and Ataru and drags him away, and then the girl is just crying, oh, my dinner. But then we cut back to
I like the fact that we cut back to what's happened to Shinobu, who's just packing her bags.
Yeah.
She's ready to go, and she reckons that this guy's just a giant pervert. She beat the crap out of him and just put him in the broth.
So good. I love and Shinobu really just shock and beat the crap out of these spirits, and I just absolutely love that so much. Like, Ataru and Mendo do nothing. It's really all Lum and Shinobu who beat these guys. I mean, I feel so bad for Shinobu that she thought she was almost, like, assaulted, and really she was almost murdered. But yeah, I mean, they're super capable. Like, this is a good, like, showing of her, like, strength, that she could beat up, like, this creepy and, like, hulking evil spirit.
Yeah, it kind of means that they were never really in any danger.
No.
Because, like, as like, you know, Shinobu was just like, oh, I'm a helpless little girl, and she picks up a bookcase.
Yeah.
Or just basically an entire bed and beats the crap out of these people. Lum electrocutes the old lady with the axe. Yeah. And then you've got the young woman is just sitting on a shell.
Yeah, no, the young woman just runs out after seeing, like, her compatriots, like, beaten and shocked. And Shinobu and Lum are, like, on top of them, stomping them. And Ten is also preparing to burn them, too. So, like, it's a triple threat. But yeah, so she runs off, and she gets on her like shell clam and is like going to go back off into the sea. And even though she was trying to eat them, they are mesmerized like by the beauty of her like riding off into the shell into the sunset.
Yeah.
But then that image of beauty is very quickly ruined by the man and the woman, old woman, also doing the same, also apologizing and trying to go off of the shell. And like they're just like, we're fed up. Just go. This is awkward.
Just get out of here. The fact that they apologize is funny as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, we're sorry. We're sorry as well. We're leaving.
Yeah.
We've got chapter 17, Baseball Shenanigans.
Return of
and just by the cover, you can...
after a couple volumes too. I think also since volume 3.
And you've got Ryoko there at the back as well.
Yeah.
In an obvious loving pose. And every time we've seen Ryoko, we just know that she's bored. And she just is waiting for her next victim, which I think we know who's going to be.
Yeah, this chapter does establish that Ryoko has had a long history of tormenting Ton for pleasure. For just to get a kick. Like, literally leaving him stranded on top of high places or drowning him and laughing at him when he calls for help. But the reason Tobimaro has come to Tomobiki is to challenge Mendo, of course. And I love that he tries to climb over the fence that... Yeah, it's interesting. Hanawa also makes a cameo here after a bit. But Hanawa and Onsen-Mark are like guarding this fence, and then Tobimaro just brings his ladder to climb over it. But, like, of course, when he gets to the midway point, the balance shifts, and so he falls flat on his face. So that's funny. But what's interesting about this baseball game is that, Ataru and Kosuke are competing against Mendo. But Ataru's team, they want to, lose. Like, they want to basically throw the game because they bet against themselves. And they at 10 pool passes if they lose the game. So they're trying to intentionally lose. But of course...
I do like that Kosuke and Ataru are basically scheming together yet again. And they've just got the exact same expression on their face.
Oh, yeah. But of course, like, they are foiled in their attempts to be foiled because not only is Mendo a bad player, but also eventually they recruit Ton in their team and Ryoko interferes and all that. But yeah, basically, like, Ton is just constantly made a fool of in this chapter. Like, he tries to act cool by saying, once I get a ball in my hands, I don't let it go, but then immediately it falls out of his hands. And then, like,
he just flicks it away.
Ataru kicks his ladder that he used to climb up into the tree down and leaves him stranded there. And then he tries to play cool by, like, resting in the tree, but then he, like, he notices the ladder, he feels uneasy, and he tries to climb down. All that falls down is his sandal. And then, of course, Ryoko comes, and then he acts a little rude to her, so in turn, like, she just leaves his ladder, just leaves him behind, stuck in the tree, as he weeps. Like, while she's laughing it up, like, enjoying his torment. And again, like, we get a flashback that shows that this has been a long history of Ryoko tormenting Tobimaro and teasing him.
And the thing is, that I think that she, in her own twisted way, she does like him.
I think as like a patsy,
but she likes him
play with.
Because she likes tormenting him.
Yeah.
And that is just her own twisted way of, being in the Mendo family of showing affection, I suppose. And, she's bored and having fun and all that kind of stuff. But I think there's a little bit of underlying, like, he is her favorite person to torment?
Yes, I think that for sure. I do not sense any romantic interest in her to him, but I do
it's not
think
romantic, but it...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think that she likes having him around because he is very amusing, because he is often very easy to make a fool of. But anyway, Tobimaro is recruited into Ataru's team in this baseball game. Because, like, Mendo wants to compete against Tobimaro because if Tobimaro loses, then, he'll back off Ryoko. Because even though he also has a bad relationship with his sister, he also hates pretty much all the men that his sister expresses interest in him. Which she knows, which is why she is interested in these men, because it upsets her brother. Well,
she gets a twofer here, doesn't she?
Yeah,
She's tormenting her brother, and she's tormenting her, her greatest tormentee, effectively.
Yes. But yes, so Ataru is very receptive to Ton joining their team because he's bad at sports. Like, he throws a bat at Ton and he does not catch it. So they think it's going to be easy losing for them with Ton on their team. But, of course, Ryoko's Kuroko interfere, and they put the baseball on a string to make it very easy for, Ton to hit it. And then, the Kuroko just runs with the ball. He doesn't even hit the ball off whatever stick it is. He just hits the ball, and then the Kuroko runs. And so Tobimaro is running the bases, and Ataru and Kosuke are trying to run after him to stop him so that they don't lose their bet. And this tips all the other students off that they are trying to throw the game, and so they demand a refund. But basically, it's a mad dash between Ataru and Tobimaro to the home plate, but as they approach it, it turns out Ryoko dug a ditch underneath it. And so she claps and jumps for joy, having got 2 people to fall into her trap.
It's very pantomime. I do love that the Kuroko kind of are obviously just always willing participants in all of this. And it's not even like they're doing stuff in the background like some kind of conspiracy. It's all forefront. And it's all just such a big show, which is exactly what Ryoko wants. So we're on to chapter 18, A Spicy Camping Calamity.
Yeah.
But this one's a great one. I do love the cover, because Lum is cooking, obviously with Tabasco.
And Ataru's sneaking away because he knows that Lum's cooking is also very spicy. Something that Mendo, Kosuke, and some random third guy, because there aren't a lot of male-named students at Tomobiki.
No.
They don't know, so they are excited at the prospect of eating Lum's food, while Ataru is pretty much okay with not and just eating chips. But they eat it and they realize, it has a usual spell. It's like wasabi, and then they eat it, and then it lets immediately inflame. They start tearing up. They try to lie to Lum and say it's the sunset, and they're just admired its beauty. But they realize tearing up later that we can't keep eating Lum's spicy food. They try to find emergency rations to eat instead, but they're all gone. A rabbit has stolen them.
We're all eaten by the rabbit.
They can tell by the trap.
And it's a talking rabbit, because of course it is.
Of course it is. They go out hunting for it. I mean, they go out foraging for food, but then they encounter the rabbit in that process, and Ataru throws Mendo. He literally just throws Mendo at the rabbit to knock it out of his guy and crush it underneath. And so... Ataru does not care that it's a talking rabbit. Mendo is, taking it back. He's I don't want to eat a talking rabbit. Ataru's who cares? It won't make any difference in our stomachs. He's very, very motivated hunger there.
Very pragmatic.
Yeah, but of course, Mendo and the others change their tune, too, when they figure out that the rabbit was the one who stole all their food.
Yeah, they all have I love the fact that they all have a laugh together, I ate all their food, they all go, ha ha ha, and then the next battle is just literally them cooking the rabbit.
Great teaming design there. They're about to roast the rabbit, but he promises to show them the village where there's other food they can eat instead, so they tie him in a rope and have him leave him there, but there are a bunch of traps meant for the rabbit, like a pitfall trap that have, a pointed bamboo underneath in the pit. There's a falling rocks trap. There's of course, a rabbit trap with a, rope, and that pulls one up into the tree and whatnot. Then there's a trap that it has, flying rakes and pitchforks thrown at them, and then eventually the villagers just come chasing after them and, stomp them all underneath them. They don't even notice that the people that are trying to chase, they've already trampled over. But, of course, Ataru and co. are mad at the rabbit, but he promises to show them somewhere else that there's food. And
so they dig, they get away from the villagers, they dig, they finally dig up, and Lum's prepared breakfast!
And
Yay!
It's just a funny joke, because, they're at the point where they say, we'll eat anything. And the rabbit's okay. And so, they're back where they started. Lum has made breakfast. They worked all night to try and find better food, but now they still have to eat both spicy cooking.
I do love this. I just love there's this... You just occasionally see a little bit about Lum's people. From, just people aliens from Oniboshi. Obviously, they find Earth food very, very bland.
Yeah.
But she doesn't like garlic, but she does really like spicy food, because it's kind of the only thing that they can taste.
Yeah.
So they mix it in with absolutely everything, and she's very blissfully unaware. And whenever she cooks something, like, it's never really specifically, like, spelt out to her throughout the entire series that you like things that are way too hot for us to eat.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting and funny culture shock joke that I think is, a little relatable because, I am Indian, and, like, Indian cuisine is often very spicy and bitter. So when I've had, non-Indian friends, like, try some Indian food, like, on the, extreme end of spiciness, they also have, like, this reaction of, like, ooh, this is a little much. Oh my gosh. So I like this kind of joke. Like, obviously it's exaggerated here on how spicy the food is, but there is some truth to it. Like, different
the fact that their lips
have
grow, like, really big and red is kind of fun. And, oh god, I love spicy food so much. One of the great things about being in Australia is that we're very multicultural, so, I had lots of friends from different cultures growing up, and we had an Indian family who lived very close to us who just cooked the most wonderful curries.
Ooh.
But the thing is, after eating curries, I'm 40 this year, by the way. I turned 40 in a couple of months.
Nice.
After 40 years of pretty much non-stop curry, I've kind of killed my taste buds. So it's kind of difficult to go back. Someone goes, oh, you should try this curry. Like, when I was in Japan, I love Japanese curry, but I usually have to have it on the spicy end. Otherwise, I can't get that flavor profile properly. And I think I've kind of ruined my taste buds now. So, and the problem is that so is my wife, because she really loves spicy food. But now that I'm almost 40 years old, my digestive system can no longer handle, like, the spiciest thing in the restaurant.
Yeah. It does depend on the food, too. If something is too spicy, it can upset your stomach.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I used to go into a restaurant and order, like, the hottest vindaloo that they had. And there's still something in me that really wants to do that, but I go, no, you can't, you idiot, stop that right now. You're gonna pay for it in, like, 2 hours.
Oh my god, yeah.
Oh, but I really want a curry now, actually.
Oh my gosh.
It's about lunchtime here.
Yeah, and it's about dinner time where I'm at, too. So, I mean, I am having, like, a tandoori chicken tonight, so... Yeah, this is making me hungry, and this next chapter is not going to help because it's called Paranormal Peachy Parable, which is some fun alliterative naming there. That also,
I think that's they have fun with the titles. They don't often have anything to do with the actual title. One of the things that kind of bugs me about this is that Cherry's head is sticking out of the peach down the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to indicate that Cherry's going to be in this chapter. Obviously, he is...
Yeah, it kind of ruins the surprise of him just popping up. And now they're obviously still on a camping trip.
Right. It's like a continuation of the previous chapter.
Yeah. It's effectively a continuation, but not exactly a part 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a direct part 2, but it's clearly in line with the continuity of the previous chapter. Like, when this was adapted into the anime, these chapters were in the same episode. But, so they're fishing because they want to, find other food that Lum is not going to cook for them. But, Ten has overheard them, like, bad-mouthing Lum's cooking, and he was going to squeal on them. But Ataru catches him with the fishing hook and uses him as bait to try and catch food. But instead, he is basically rescued, or rather, the scene is interrupted by a peach floating down the river.
And this is obviously an allusion to Momotaro,
yes.
the Japanese legend / fairy tale / story. And of course, they break open the peach to find Jerry.
Yeah, they all take swings at him, but he definitely dodges. But he explains that he was doing training up the river, and then he landed out in a peach paradise, and it was full of beautiful flowers and lots of fruit and nymphs, and that entices the gang to go search out this place. And Lum suspects they're in it for the nymphs, but Ataru says that they're in it for the food, and I imagine it's a little bit of both. I think they're also still hungry.
It's probably both, but, as soon as he heard they were beautiful women, he's all in.
And I love that...
I do love Lum's reaction, because everyone else is like, oh my god, Cherry, and they all go, bam, and they all fall over. But Lum has this incredulous look on her face. Like, every time Cherry shows up, she's just like going, oh god, this guy again.
Yeah, she's not as taken aback, but she is a little annoyed by it.
She's always annoyed by Cherry rather than, like, finding him, like, rather than being shocked or anything.
I mean, every character is in this series. But yeah, I love how Cherry is trying to boast that because he is a monk, it's because of his spiritual awareness that allowed him to find Peach Paradise, when it's so easy to find it because there are signs there. There are different entrances, one for the fruit course, one for the nymph course, and Ataru tries to trick everyone so that he can go to the nymph course alone. Like, he says, oh, there are 5 ape men, look! And they're actually interested. They're like, oh, where is it? Where are they? And that gives Ataru a chance to slip away into the cave route. But it turns out both routes, they both lead to the same place, so it's
lead
pretty
to the same place. Yeah.
And there's Peach Paradise, even has a sign. It says, this is indeed Peach Paradise, to convince people that they're really there.
I like, Cherry is basically spat out by no ugly people, swallowed up by a peach.
There's a sign that's like, ugly people, no entry, and so a peach just gobbles him up, and it falls in the river to take him back down to the mortal realm. Then they encounter a woman being carried off on this platform by some monks in the Peach Paradise, and Taro immediately hits on her, and they basically get a lowdown on the situation that an evil Peach is going to destroy them unless they offer up this monk's daughter as a sacrifice. And so their solution is oh, we're just gonna take the girl and leave the place. And her dad is like, hey, no, and we want you to defeat the evil Peach. And Ataru's like, well, how the hell do we do that? And this guy basically gives a spiel about, hey, there's a sacred sword, the Momotaro. Again, playing back into the Momotaro legend illusions here. It's a legendary sword in the ground at the foot of a peach tree. And they have to overcome these obstacles to go and retrieve it. And so they decide to do it for this maiden. But they're giving, these racing numbers that they'll have to wear, and then everyone...
So there's a little bit of cultural significance here. In the 80s, in a lot of places all over the world, there were shows on television that were basically giant obstacle courses.
Yeah.
The most famous of this was Takeshi's Challenge, or I can't remember what it was actually called, Takeshi no Shoshinjo or something like that. And basically... No, it was Takeshi's Castle. I'm thinking about the game. But Takeshi was a famous person in Japan at the time, and he hosted this... It was basically like a Ninja Warrior, or an obstacle courses that people run through, and they fall into pits, or they have to go dodge things, or run on a giant ball, or and some of it was very randomized. In Australia, we had our own take on that called It's a Knockout. That was basically held in a stadium, and there were big mud pits, and you had to swing across things on a rope. And this is kind of very much a style at the time, allusions of those sorts of shows.
Obstacle course game shows were big,
especially in Japan. These things were really popular.
As a kid, I think my favorite of these types of game shows, they were very kid oriented. Nickelodeon had a lot of these. My favorite of them was Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Like Double Dare?
Yeah, like Double Dare. But I think more akin to these kind of crazy obstacle course kind of challenges would be something like Legends of the Hidden Temple, which is one of my personal favorites as a kid.
I've seen that referenced on Twitter a few times, but it was back in the 80s. These were adults would train for these to go on these shows.
And then they just force these untrained kids to go on them for entertainment.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
It's kind of funny the way this kind of happens. It was a show for adults, and then adults got over it, so they went, oh, we can market this towards kids, and then we make the kids go through it.
Yeah, one thing I want to note, actually, about these monks' designs, though, is that, this is a great joke, is that when they're first introducing it, when, the father of this girl is introducing himself, it's this pitch black panel where we're just seeing his eyes, and then we see in the next panel, him from the side, where we realize, oh, this guy is just super hairy. Black hair is just all encompassing his body. So that's just how he looks. It's interesting, these designs. Hair is just completely covering their bodies. They're just big, bushy mustaches. It's very interesting.
And it turns out that they were all just gambling.
Yes.
Effectively, they were just betting on people because they're bored in their immortality.
Yeah, they're just forcing them to go on this obstacle course to entertain themselves with betting who will come in. And of course, Ataru is the one who wins. So congrats on the guy who bet on Ataru. Not always the best.
And of course, Ataru is always number 4.
Yes,
He's always the unlucky number 4.
Oh, that's such a good joke there, too.
Okay, and next we've got, we're up to our last two chapters, the...
Perfidy of the Sakura Triplets. I think this is a really great cover illustration, too. What with all the Sand Sakura's hair, like, connecting with each other and forming, like, a ocean that we see Ten and Ataru, like, swimming through. Like, this is a really good composition. I like it a lot.
It looks really good. I'd love to see the originals for a lot of these.
Yeah.
Also, perfidy? I actually don't know that word.
Yeah.
That is not an actual word that I'm familiar with, and I used to be an English teacher, so I don't know, that strikes me as a little weird.
Yeah, perfidy just means, like, deceitfulness and trustworthiness. So, you know, they could have used duplicity or deceit, but they went for perfidy.
It's just that sometimes you just come across words that just aren't used in your culture. And this is just not a word that we use in Australian culture, interestingly.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at that going, is this perfidy? Is it perfidy?
But yeah, it's basically they're all on the beach. Like, Sakura just was there, gonna do it on her own, but then she just encountered all the kids there, all our usual crew of Shinobu, Mendo, Ataru, and Lum, and Cherry's there too, but he's been buried in the sand with his head sticking out, and he doesn't play much of this chapter, but it's a fun little detail. He's in this first and last
It's
page.
nice that Sakura is here with Cherry, I think, because they kind of are part and parcel a lot of the time.
Yeah, I bet she didn't want to come with Cherry. Cherry just tagged along or ended up being there too. Luckily for her, he does not do much in this chapter. He's like asleep through the entire thing. He's literally in just his first and last page. But yeah, I mean, she has Shinobu rub like lotion on her back. And it's clear that she's there because she's planning to meet up with Tsubame, as we later see in the chapter. But she is being coy about that. Meanwhile, Ataru is, like, bullying Ten, because Ten is building a sandcastle, and then Ataru, like, pokes a hole in this levee that Ten built to keep the water out. And he also builds, like, a path for the water to come through to, flood the castle. So the water does do that when the tide comes in, and it destroys Ten's castle. So he uses this he uses this core to build it. When he builds another castle, he puts this core inside it, and it's unbreakable no matter what Ataru does. It doesn't get washed away by the river. It doesn't get washed away when Ataru just tries to, like, destroy it while playing pretend with, like, a toy monster.
Yeah, I do like that. Oh, look, a monster. Tonk, tonk.
And so this gives Ataru.
It's a clever little gimmick here.
So they wait for Shinobu. They wait for Sakura to fall asleep, and then Shinobu to leave to get cola, and then Ataru convinces Lum to go with her, and says that he won't be able to do anything with Sakura because he tries to. He tries to pull Sakura's bra right from under her, but instinctually Sakura punches him dab in the face, and that's enough to convince Lum that there's nothing to worry about because Sakura won't let anything get past her. And Mendo comes.
I like how they say that's some micro power, and it's not micro power. It's just like she's aware of these.
It's a certain sense of spiritual
basically.
awareness of her surroundings that she can react like this in her sleep. But yeah, like, Ataru goes to work building a replica of Sakura, and then he's going to use the sand core to bring it to life. And apparently one of the functions of this core is that they can animate these bodies and give them, like, personalities, I guess.
Well, less personality and just kind
they
of
can
like
talk,
kind of more just
they can like interact at the very least. They're a little robotic. But yeah, they basically like this convinces Mendo and Ten to build their own sand Sakuras. So they do that. They put the cores inside, and they each go off on their own respective dates with their own respective sand Sakura. But while Shinobu and Lum were out getting cola, they encounter Tsubame, and that's when they realize what's up with, the fact they were meeting there on the beach to go on a date, and Tsubame's thinking to himself, maybe it's time to set the date for a wedding. But then he sees, Ataru with Sakura, or one of the sand Sakuras. I like how he, like, pushes Lum and Shinobu's faces down into the ground. It's like, he doesn't want them to be noticed, but it's like, why would you do that without warning? And then he, like, takes an umbrella from a guy, and he, like, uses it to, like, hide them while they walk behind him, even though they're, like, trudging up, like, sand in front of the umbrella. Even though it's, like, a real eyesore, like, everyone on the beach is like, paying attention to it. They're really drawing attention to himself, but Ataru is just blissfully unsuspectful of this. But yeah, they spy on Ataru, then they encounter Mendo and his own son Sakura, and that enrages Shinobu, so Shinobu throws a rock on Mendo, bashes him with a rock on his head.
She's awfully violent.
This really discourages Tsubame. And he thinks that she wants to...
I gotta say, like, Tsubame, like, he's just got a bit of a Godai look about him in this chapter.
Yeah, honestly.
Like, a lot of his facial expressions are just very reminiscent of Godai from Maison Ikoku.
Yeah, honestly, and Sakura herself, there are times where she does resemble Kyoko. Yeah. I think maybe there are some crossed wires here, because obviously Takashi was serializing this at the same time by this point, so kind of interesting there.
Jeez, that sounds big.
Yeah. But yeah, so Tsubami's very discouraged, like thinking Sakura wants to break up with him. And of course, Lum and Shinobu are mad at their respective love interests for going on dates with Sakura. I also love the detail that when Lum is shocking Ataru and the sand Sakura, like Ataru reacts with the sand, Sakura doesn't, because obviously it's made of, sand, and sand doesn't conduct electricity, so it wouldn't be affected. But yeah, Tsubame encounters the real Sakura waking up from her nap, and she is confused by him saying that, oh, you want to break up with me, and she doesn't know what he's talking about. But yeah, then everyone all congregates, and they realize what's going on. It's that they all made sand Sakuras. Sagami is a little slow in the uptick, though, so he's pulling on the sand Sakura to the real Sakura's chagrin. But yeah, eventually they disable the sand dolls, and they're all pulling the real Sakura. So it's just one big mess. And it's scary.
Tsubame and Sakura's relationship seems like the most adult. Like from the outside looking in, it seems like they're the ones who actually have it together. They have a proper relationship. They go out on dates and stuff, and they're engaged and thinking about a date to get married. But it turns out that he's still an idiot.
Yeah, they're both insecure in their own ways about their partner cheating on him. So the real Sakura is reacting with tears at Tsubame pulling on the arm of a sand Sakura. She knows that these are fake, and he's just easily gullible, but she's taking this very personally.
Okay, so the last chapter is Dolphin Dating and Beach Babe Patrol.
Oh, there are two more after this. There's this one and one more after this.
Is there another one, is there?
Yeah. But this is interesting. So this opening page, this cover page, it's showing Ataru draw graffiti on the sign of Lum and the humanoid version of the dolphin. Can you guess at what he is writing?
It doesn't seem to be anything.
Ah, okay.
It's just a circle, basically. He's just trying to paint over it by the look of it. That's not anything that I recognize as Japanese characters.
I think he's probably just trying to deface the dolphin side, jealous. But yeah, this chapter starts with Ataru, intercepting a game of women playing volleyball. He returns their ball and invites himself to join them. And they're open to it because they don't suspect anything. And then, Lum is mad at him. And she yells out, do you care if I go swimming with another man? Because Mendo asks her to swim with him. And Ataru's yeah, sure. He's, just enjoying the game. So, she shocks him. And in the ocean, of the beach, a dolphin is spying them, envious of how much fun they're having, and he bumps into some girls swimming, and he, tries to hit on them, giving them her card, offering to buy them cola, but they just run away from him, because he creeps them out. But then he encounters Lum.
It's a very Takahashi drawing of a dolphin, massive eye with a tiny dot pupil, which she likes to do with a lot of her, comical animals.
Big bulbous nose, too. But, which is also plays humorously into the first humanoid design of the dolphin. But yeah, so he encounters Lum, and he makes friends with her, because she doesn't find him creepy, because she's used to all sorts of different creatures. He's not weird to her.
Yeah, the dolphin does kind of look like an alien here, and if you've seen, the kind of creatures that Lum went to school with, she doesn't find this kind of stuff out of place or creepy at all. Talking dolphin, sure, whatever.
Yeah, a lot of them are animal.
And then what's great is that she turns him into a guy that looks something a little bit like Genma. from Run My
Squatter fatter Genma, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he has, like, again, that same kind of bulbous nose, like the dolphin had originally. So it's very much like a failed transformation. It's kind of like the failed fusions in DBZ before they get it right. But yeah, so, like, Lum wants to use the dolphin to make Ataru jealous by having him transform into a handsome man and going on a date with him, pretend date, to make Ataru jealous and attract his attention away from other women and onto her. But Ataru is having a great time, like, just hanging out with these girls. It's like, they don't seem to mind hanging out with him.
They're not hating him, they're pretty receptive.
He bought them cola, like, it seems like they're chilling pretty nicely there. But yeah, like, he notices Lum with the handsome humanoid version of the dolphin.
Tanned man.
Yeah, very tall and tan, yeah. He attracts a lot of attention from a lot of ladies on the beach. Mendo's mad at Ataru because, like, you know, this is your fault that Lum has fallen into the hands of another handsome man, even though Mendo himself is handsome, and he, like, obscures his own vision with his own tears and slashes open a watermelon, which impresses a bunch of other ladies, and that quickly gets him off. That quickly gets Lum off his mind, because then he just, like, goes to impressing all these other ladies by offering them watermelon slices. But yeah. And the dolphin is very happy of all the attention that he's receiving from all these girls. And but when the dolphin is distracted or his attention breaks, like, his eyes revert to how they were, like these big, like, shapes with small pupils. So Lum tells him, hey, be mindful to not break your transformation. And so, basically, Ataru, like, the dolphin does successfully, like, flirt with a few women at first, and Ataru is, like, spying on him, like, flirting, offering his card to other girls, and is getting mad. And Lum is also spying on him, spying on the dolphin, very humorously. He throws a frisbee at the dolphin, and that makes his eyes pop out, and so then Lum tramples over Ataru to just get the dolphin out of the way, to remind him to put his eyes back to normal. And so Ataru disguises himself under a raft, and then, like, basically gropes a woman to make it seem like a dolphin did, so that she'll slap the dolphin, and basically goes through a bunch of shenanigans, like, to put the dolphin in situations where he'll be beat up. Like, he trips him then right after, so he falls on top of a woman who slaps him.
And of course, by the end of the chapter, he comes to the realization that he doesn't really want to be a beautiful man, handsome beautiful man. He wants to be a beautiful human girl.
Yeah.
So he changes genders, becomes a girl, and of course, Ataru's jealousy immediately just turns to lust.
Yeah, that's a great punchline. I like how his realization is, like, boys have it so awful, wretched existence, because they're always getting slapped and punched, and they have to treat girls instead of getting the ice cream themselves. So it's like, I like how the straw that breaks the camel's back here is that Mendo offers Lum an ice cream and not him. And then says that, hey, if you're a man, you have to treat the ladies. I like that just that idea that he has to be selfless is the straw that breaks the camel's back there. Like, this dolphin is not a great person, but I think that...
And of course, at the end of the chapter, Ataru does actually say, get your hands off my woman.
Oh, that makes him so happy. I love her expression there.
It does, and she's just got this look of glee on her face, and of course, she's already changed the dolphin's already changed into a woman, and Ataru is just, oh,
yeah, baby. I love the comedic timing of battles. But yeah, I do stand this trans dolphin. This human transgender dolphin.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, there's just something really cool about it. Just the way it's played out, and the way it's set up, and the way it finishes. It just, how quickly Ataru's attitude changes is brilliant comedic timing as well. So we're up. Okay, now this is the last chapter.
Ending off this trilogy of beach chapters.
Forgive my eyesight.
Yes.
Keep our beaches clean.
And this cover page is interesting because it shows off these new characters we'll introduce in this chapter. We don't really know what they're doing, but they are lamenting the beach is covered in trash, which is a good setup for their goal as the chapter develops. I like how this guy...
Yeah, there's a bit of environmental awareness here, which is nice.
It's interesting, like... Obviously, this is a Dapaya fish alien underneath like this cloak and sunflower hat, but to me it's like it kind of reminds me of Tetsuro, his design from Galaxy Express 39.
That is definitely there's definitely a reference there. I think there's definitely something there, especially hanging around with a beautiful woman as well. And 999 would have come out before Urusei Yatsura.
Yeah, and that was mid-70s at least, I think.
Mid-70s, I think. Early to mid-70s, yeah.
They were contemporaries.
It's still very, very popular and well-known in Japan. Even if you haven't read the manga or seen the anime, everyone knows Galaxy Express 999.
For sure.
So there's a swim team here. They're all practicing. Of course, Ataru and Mendo want to go have a good perv. But then... What's great about this is that Mendo is just kind of going along with Ataru's shenanigans. Yeah. Like, he's just a willing participant now. He just knows that there's fun to be had at ogling these women, and he just goes, I'll go along with it, and as soon as the plan fails, it's all Ataru's fault. But Lum and Shinobu here just both look at Mendo and Ataru with the same facial expression, which I see is just really clever. Like, Mendo is so much more like Ataru in this chapter, I think. Like, he's just kind of less violent and more kind of almost like a sidekick to Ataru and his shenanigans, which is a little bit different than what we've seen recently.
Yeah, less airs of pretentiousness or that he's better than Ataru. He really is just like his co-conspirator here. But so are Lum and Shinobu, because they both scheme to rub some interesting sunscreen on their backs so that they'll sink like a stone if they try and swim in the ocean. So they can't go and perv on the swim team. They don't do it on 10 because 10 will just float up anyway. And that's how Ataru and Mendo are able to get themselves back afloat too, is that they use 10 to pull them up out of the water, but they're still flailing around until the new characters we meet who are selling like these floaties are really just giving them away. They give them some floaties for them to swim in. They have their own scheme for why, and they don't charge them, but there's a different price they'll be paying anyway. But so they go off after the swim team in these floaties, but the swim team swims away from them, and they're confused why until they realize that Lum has stuck a no swimming zone flyer on the back of Ataru's floaty. So they pull that off and get the swim team to not swim away from them. And I like how Ataru is perfectly comfortable admitting that, hey, we can't swim, but Mendo is trying to put on airs. I'm no, I'm actually an excellent singer. I'm very good. Until the teacher offers to have them join the class, in which case Mendo completely backs off on his posturing and says, right, I'm a terrible swimmer. I'd love to join. That's really great. But Lum is, of course, messing with that plan by using this robotic shark fin to scare the swimmers away. And they go chasing after them. We see that these rental floaty characters are watching from a distance. The mermaid girl is kind of sad because it's supposed to be their job to do what Ataru and Mendo are currently doing. But, the bio alien is whispering in their ear, I can understand why this flag off too. But they eventually just use 10 to burn up the shark robot. But the women still swim away because trailing behind Ataru and Mendo is a bunch of trash, because these floaties are used for cleaning garbage. They basically have some power to attract garbage. And so the mermaid and the pie alien, they collect all the garbage and they go back off under the sea. This is where we get the reveal that the girl was a mermaid, and that the guy under the cloak was a pie alien. Which is a great reveal.
Yeah, he's a Dapya. Yeah. And I do love the reveal that he's a Dapya as well, because they don't always have such a prominent place in the story. They're just very much kind of like a Where's Wally sort of, or Where's Waldo. You kind of just spot him randomly in the background of stories. But, he's kind of a more prominent role due to the unveil here, which I kind of like.
And that brings us to the end of Volume 7. And I guess just to comment briefly on the data files, we got one on Ataru, which was very fitting because it was for, volume 13 of these releases originally in Japan. So 13, unlucky number, spotlight on Ataru and his unluckiness, just perfect synergy there, very appropriate. And it's basically, that data file is basically just running down, hey, Ataru's very unlucky, how does he deal with his unluckiness? It basically goes over his resourcefulness, how he, puts off his unluckiness on others, dragging other people out with him. But he also is very adaptable and very willing to go along. It makes a good point of, hey, it's because of Ataru's unluckiness he met Lum, so it's not always such a bad thing. And then the data file for...
Yeah, he kind of plays his unluckiness to his own favor.
Yeah, he uses it to his advantage. And then the data file for volume 14... is a fashion spotlight of Lum's different outfits, and it does really go to show that even though Lum is very famous for her iconic bikini look, she does have a lot of really cool outfits in the series, and it's nice to have a spotlight on her sense of fashion and how she has, different fashions for different occasions, casual wear, date wear, and formal wear. I like that.
And there is one here where she's dressed like Madonna.
Yeah. Takahashi probably definitely took some influences from some real fashion styles of
you would have had to. A lot of this screams 80s, especially early to mid 80s fashion.
Yeah. And then for count columns we had one for 10 and All the Times He Cried, which was 25 times throughout the series, and 5 because of Ataru, 5 because of being rejected by love interests, among other various occasions. And then there's a count column for All the Times Mendo Reads Books, which points out very humorously that in his first appearances when Mendo is shown reading, he's wearing intellectual type books, philosophy books, Emmanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. But as the series goes on and the gimmick of him being obsessed with octopuses kind of takes over, he's just shown more and more reading books about octopi. So that's also kind of a fun little detail there.
Yeah, I think Mendo kind of loses a lot of his... he's still upper class, but he loses a lot of his kind of...
pretentiousness. Yeah.
Pretentiousness, I suppose. Kind of he doesn't lose his arrogance per se, but he kind of... when you get to know him, you certainly have a much lower opinion of him.
Yeah.
As the series goes on. Even early on, it kind of hints that he's basically just Ataru, but rich.
Mm.
But as you kind of move on from that, he does become his own character, but as you get to know him, he's more than what you think he is, but he's also less than what you originally thought he was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think that brings us to the end of Lum Squad episode 5.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be a long one.
This was an interesting episode, considering the two halves of this were recorded months apart. Literally, we begin this episode by saying, hey, we recorded this on Halloween of 2020, and now the second half, you're listening to the end of this, we recorded it on February 5th, 2021, so literally 3 months have passed in the span of the single episode you've been listening to. It's a long 3 months since past here at
I did tweet out something saying my 2020 New Year's resolution is to put more effort in and make more Lum Squad. It's now 2021.
Oh, God.
However, we have set aside some time at the beginning of each month, so we should be able to record this fairly regularly.
Yes, we have a recording plan and a release plan that I think should be very manageable to stick to. Monthly releases, we'll probably record first Friday or at least first weekend of every month, and release episodes on the last Friday or at least the last weekend of every month.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much for listening to Lum Squad. You can find me at Prod Tally, home of the Daily Lum, on Twitter. And where can we find you?
You can find me at Lum Ramiyasha on Twitter. Variety of places under that name, AniList, Animation Revolution, wherever there's a Lum Ramiyasha, that's where you can find me. You can read my reviews on allatchum.com. We got a lot coming in, a lot of books, reviews of books going out, so look forward to more of those on there for me. And of course, you can find this podcast at Lum_Squad on Twitter. And of course, we have our own podcast feed for this podcast. You can look for that on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, a lot of places going on for this podcast and its own dedicated podcast feed. And mention the Twitter at Lum_Squad, but also we have an email if you want to send us feedback and send in suggestions or thoughts on the show, lumsquadpod@gmail.com. and a Tumblr, lumsquad.tumblr.com. And also, of course, this podcast we posted in the Manga Mavericks feed, so you can follow Manga Mavericks for updates, especially because early episodes of this podcast, or at least like these podcasts, if they're done edited early, they'll be posted early on the Manga Mavericks Patreon, so you can check that out at patreon.com/Manga Mavericks, where we have a lot of tier options for you to pledge support at, like $2 early access tier if you want to listen to early episodes of Lum Squad books, so $5 tier for bonus podcasts, like currently we're going through Saint Seiya, 2 volumes at a time. Colton and Doctor are reading it for the first time, so if you want to hear in their thoughts on that classic 80s Shonen Jump manga, you gotta check in on that. They're entering the Hades arc, so I'm excited to hear their reactions to that arc. It's in particular. And you can also follow Manga Mavericks at Manga_Mavericks, and of course, the Manga Mavericks podcast is on all these podcast platforms you can think of. YouTube/Manga Mavericks. You can also watch episodes of Mavericks and Lum Squad on there. Lum Squad also has a YouTube channel. You can also just search for that. The channel name is just Lum Squad. And I think, that about covers it. And thank you for joining us again for this wonderful, wacky journeys through the lovely world of Takashi Tsurusagata. And we will see you again in the next episode as we cover the 8th omnibus volume of the series, which I am very much looking forward to.
Oh, yeah, that kind of introduces the, it kind of finalizes the cast, let us say. Goodbye, darlings!
I've done it!